Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our August executive meeting. Susanna, I don't know online, I don't know whether you know, but your camera is on and we can see you larger than life on our big screens in the room. So if you could just pop your camera off, and similarly, Mr. Heafy. There we go. Thank you ever so much. So good morning and welcome to our executive meeting, and I'll just go through the preamble. It is only the executive league members present in the room that are taking the decisions at this meeting. Others are in attendance to provide advice to the executive. We have no planned fire drills today. In the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. If anyone present might need assistance, please ask a member of the Democratic Services team to help you. Agenda and papers have been published on the council website in advance of the meeting, and the council recognised the importance of striking the balance between providing opportunities for the lawful expression of views and any unacceptable behaviours or actions that cause disruption can lead to meetings being adjourned. And the council will make a recording of this meeting and it will be published in due course. So we're running this meeting, we're using a hybrid format. So the league members and key officers are physically present in the Luttrell room in County Hall. Other elected members and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or to observe the whole meeting. This meeting is being broadcast and therefore only members of the public and partners can observe remotely. If you are online, can you only use the chat function for the purposes of the meeting? Primarily, if you wish to speak, could you put your hand up? If you are entitled to at any given point, and I will say, please say your name before speaking when called, and please otherwise make sure microphones and cameras are turned off because it helps the smooth running of the meeting. I'm not aware of any lead members that have sent apologies. I've seen associate lead members Val Keach, Joe Randall Green, and Fran Smith and Nicola Clark all have sent apologies for various reasons, if we can note those. In terms of officers, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Claire Winter and Amelia Walker are both online. Claire will be online for the duration of the meeting and Amelia will come on for the 2 DMP related papers.
Mel Locke's on holiday.
Okay, thank you so much. And minutes from previous meetings. We got draft minutes from the meeting held on the 7th of July. Are there any alterations or amendments? Okay, proposed Councillor Lyshawn that we accept those, seconded by Councillor Wilkins. All those in favour, all those against, that is clearly carried. And Julie, I'll find the right page, signed. Okay. Which brings us on to any declarations of interest. Not seeing anybody indicating, which brings us on. Councillor Mark Healy. No, Councillor Mark Healy's not interested anymore.
I'm always interested, Chairman, as you know, about everything to do with the council. Yes, I don't know whether I'm going to declare an interest or not. It's an item later on. It's about Puriton School. As a divisional councillor, do I have to declare an interest at all?
Well, you can declare that you're interested, but there's no pecuniary or financial or any legal interest in the terms of this agenda item. But thank you for your interest.
Thank you. I'm always interested, Chairman.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Bob. So Susanna Clements, public speaker, is your microphone and camera able to be turned on, please?
Hello. Good morning. Thank you.
you so much for your question. You've got 3 minutes to address the executive, and we do have the text in front of us. So your time starts now, and I'm generally flexible.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me address you. I've been asked to speak on behalf of Glastonbury residents who've been campaigning for safe crossings over the A39 and A361 Wirral Park Junction. It's locally known as a B&Q roundabout. Nearly 300 people signed on paper a petition calling for safer crossings. We've been especially campaigning for a safe multi-user crossing between KFC or near KFC and Travelodge near Ranger Road. I've included a map so you can see where that is. The busy, fast A39 to Wells cuts off the residential areas and the town centre and the main tourist destinations from major supermarkets, both the biggest hotels, the manufacturing district, the bus stops, skate park, Wirral Hill, and most of the direct walking and cycling routes to street. And at present, many people, especially those who are too young, old, disabled, or poor to drive, have to dodge heavy traffic to get to school and college, to walk the dogs, to go shopping, to work, to catch buses to Bridgewater, Taunton and Yeovil. It's so dangerous to walk or cycle around this junction that people who do have access to a car are forced to drive distances of a few yards, even when they'd rather not, adding to traffic jams, pollution, their own ill health and danger for everybody. We understand through Glastonbury Town Council, who have been really great with this, that County Highways will undertake a feasibility study for such a crossing. This is brilliant news. We're so grateful. We have got a couple of questions. What will be the scope of the feasibility study in terms of depth, detail, time span, which branch of the junction will be included? And the map can help you with this. And then secondly, big question, we're told that external funding will be required. We're not going to balk at this. We knew that it was essential in order to gather the funds and so that our respective roles are well defined, including us having the county's authority and support to approach major bodies for funds, including big businesses for funds and permissions. Please could you set out the protocols and procedures and any precedents that might help us as a guidelines? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, Susanna. I'm going to invite Councillor Richard Wilkins to respond. Richard.
Hello, Susanna. Thank you, and I am really grateful for your questions, and I appreciate the thoughtful input and level of community engagement. It highlights the great work we do in delivering improvements to our local highways that can make a real difference to the communities and address road safety issues and concerns. We're currently reviewing the scope of the feasibility study and expect to engage with key stakeholders once this is confirmed. In general terms, the study will aim to identify preferred solutions for a safe crossing area, set out a programme for developing a detailed design, and provide outline of estimated costs for delivery. The feasibility study is being funded by Active Travel England at this stage. It is anticipated that delivery of any agreed scheme may be eligible for future government grant funding. And we look forward to working collaboratively on this matter, on this very important matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilkins, and thank you again, Susanna, for your question. Our next question, Dr. Liz Parfitts. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning. I did prepare some PowerPoint slides. I don't know if they've been made available to people. That's lovely. Thank you very much. I'll refer to those as I go through. Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak today. It's very timely because last month the International Court of Justice ruled that countries must act now to avoid climate catastrophe by regulating climate impact from businesses. And just yesterday, DEFRA announced that they will tighten their stance on agricultural practice to tackle pollution of water from soil, fertilisers and more. We are, of course, all part of the solution. And this takes me back to my question. Does Somerset Council need to build a better understanding of the problem of climate change and how each individual is part of the solution at board, committee and division level? So as I said, we're all part of the solution, but only if we ask the right questions and allow the environmental scientists and ecologists to present valid evidence so that you are able to make the right decisions and to write enforceable planning conditions. We need transparent evaluation of benefit versus harm, and we expect effective action against those who act in a contrary way to the trust that your planners and our committees place in them. That was the first slide. Is it right, therefore, that some potentially harmful activities have been operating on Weston Zoyland Airfield outside of planning permission or conditions for over 2 years? Without an environmental impact assessment, we have no idea of the individual and cumulative impact of these activities on the Ramsar site to the north or the SSSI site to the south. We ask you to return our voice to your decision making. We want planning decisions to have high quality technical input, including from your ecology and environmental health services and others like Natural England, to be consulted where necessary to give fair, lawful, reasonable and compatible decisions that take into account the rights of sensitive and of those most vulnerable in society. We would like applicants to correct errors in their applications, deficiencies or contradictions, so that planning conditions are enforceable based on their applications, or if they are unable to do so, to have their application refused quite quickly to save your staff work. I've given you some links through to the Soil Management Task Force and DEFRA papers that could be taken into account when considering the importance of soil management programmes as well with planning applications. Later on today, when you're discussing the topic of energy, topic 7 may lead you to celebrate how much organic material is diverted from landfill to anaerobic digestion, or the yield of biofuels to boost energy production. But please balance this against the many thousands of tons of maize crop for anaerobic digestion grown on land that could instead provide human or animal foods, or the environmental impact of potential water or air pollution from composting or storing the byproducts of these processes. And I then provided you with a list of the potential pollutants from composting, soil management and silage productions as taken from the government website. And you can see that these create quite a scary list with major and significant impacts, both environmentally, but also on public health as well. Some of those have transboundary effects, the biologist slipped in there, which means that they have widespread effects that can travel much further afield and can interact with one another to make the situation even worse. So therefore, in conclusion, my second to last slide, the most important thing that I think we are finding is that many people involved in the decision making seem to get ecology and environmental very much mixed up, but they are very, very different. We need to remember that this is why we need the specialist advice, that we cannot just trust the applicant to provide all the correct information in a form that is understandable and usable. And therefore we need to continue to use the Ecology and Environmental Service to help us make decisions that are, as we said, legal decisions based around technologies that are very complex at the minute and still not fully understood. The final slide, I'll skip the last two, they were put in for your fun really. The final slide comes from Climate Guide 2020, and it provides information to local authorities so that they can audit their climate readiness. So if this takes us back to the first two legal situations that I talked about, you can see those written down there. And it's very much about working together collaboratively, about identifying needs so that those people that are involved in the decision making and discussions are able to do so in a very informed way so that they understand what the consequences, short term and long term, of their actions are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liz. And I I did allow you to go significantly over your
I'm really
3 minutes.
sorry.
I'm sure you'll appreciate that. But with the importance of the topic, I think merited that. And thank you so much for the presentation as well, which I know a number of we were following along with you on our screens. Councillor Graham Oakes, good morning, Graham, is going to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank Dr. Parfitt for sending across what is a very interesting and informative presentation and for posing the thoughtful question on the critical issue of climate change and the ecological crisis. The 5 former Somerset councils recognised the seriousness of this issue and all declared climate emergencies back in 2019 and adopted our climate emergency strategy in 2020, which set out our ambition to play our part in tackling this global issue. We also ran actions across 9 work streams and to become climate neutral councils by 2030. Somerset Council has reiterated the need to tackle both the climate and ecological emergencies, and this is a priority within our council plan for a greener, more sustainable Somerset. This golden thread of cutting our carbon footprint and promoting nature's recovery runs through council decision making and service planning. We are in the process of developing a climate vision for the council and for wider Somerset, and have the Somerset Emergency Investment Plan ready for adoption at today's executive, which sets out a high-level plan for a growth of renewable energy generation across the county and for completing a carbon baseline for Somerset Council, which will identify where emissions are arising through council operations and service delivery and where we need to target action to cut our emissions. We're also in the process of developing Somerset's local nature recovery strategy, which will be a roadmap to how we improve biodiversity and support nature across the county. We're also developing a programme of carbon literacy training for both our elected members, senior officers and staff, which we'll be rolling out in the autumn. And we work closely with the South West Net Zero Hub based in Weka to promote community renewable energy projects and energy efficiency programmes. Finally, I note that Dr. Parfitt references the Adapt Live Labs 2 programme and the South Gloucestershire project to turn green waste into biofuels. Somerset Council is also part of the Live Labs 2 programme with our own highways operations decarbonisation project, which is tracking ways to cut carbon from highway maintenance activities. We have regular briefings from all the various Live Labs projects to understand how these projects are progressing and what positive benefits could be more widely adopted. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for the question and for the answer. And our next public speaker is Liz Brown.
Thank you. Good morning, Leader, councillors and officers. As both a parish councillor and an ecologist, I am deeply concerned about the proposed changes to the ecological appraisal process for planning applications. As we've heard, we have a climate change and biodiversity crisis. The Planning and Infrastructure Bill reforms considered by Parliament proposes changes to reduce developers' obligations for conducting appraisals for mitigating species and habitat harm or loss. These changes will certainly advantage developers and disadvantage our diminishing wildlife. Although the existing framework does not fully ensure the protection of UK species and habitats, the elimination of independent oversight by the local planning authority ecologist is highly likely to have profound consequences for wildlife already facing challenges. Ecologists working on behalf of the council have greater experience and understanding of habitats, local landscapes and ecology. They also have the benefit of independent oversight on the impacts of applications and the scrutiny of reports submitted on behalf of the applicant. At present, developers engage consultancies to conduct primary ecological appraisals, which determine the need for additional survey work. If baseline surveys occur during the dormant season, for example, further surveys may be required over subsequent seasons to establish presence, absence and locations of species on site. Council ecologists verify that necessary surveys are conducted prior to the commencement of works and determined whether the appointment of an ecological clerk of works is appropriate. Without this oversight, consultancies may allow their clients' interests to influence the LPA, making site evaluations reliant on the consultant's integrity. Being implemented and at what short-term gain? With what criteria will the LPA assess the merits of approved ecologists? How may these changes affect the already limited enforcement of mitigation measures and the completion of necessary follow-up surveys? And as an aside, a group of parish councils are discussing the possibility of funding an additional enforcement officer. Is this something the council would consider? Will reducing this layer of scrutiny put the council at risk of contravention of EIA regs, Wildlife and Countryside Act, Habitat Regulations, the NERC Act and Environment Act 2021, not to mention conflicting with the local nature recovery strategy as already mentioned? Could the Executive Committee consider implementation of a triage system for all housing developments with the aim of maintaining existing protocols to ensure the protection of nature in major developments? Is it not the duty of care to all those in authority to provide a healthy, sustainable environment for all our future generations? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Councillor Mike Rigby to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for raising these important concerns. I fully understand your apprehension regarding the proposed changes to the ecological appraisal process. In light of the current pressures on planning services, the Council's agreed a triage system to help manage the high volume of applications while maintaining ecological integrity. Somerset Ecological Services have been actively involved in shaping a more balanced and pragmatic response to the prioritising decisions period, which is looking to ensure the right balance in considering the ecological impacts and enhancements of sites, whilst allowing applications to be issued to release the backlog of planning applications. Under this system, case officers will be reviewing the supporting information submitted on those applications that meet the criteria set out below, but will continue to seek advice from SES if there are any concerns or questions. Those criteria being where sites do not lie within a backed consultation zone or a special area of consultation, where the site is not within a phosphate catchment zone, and provided the development is not a major planning application. For applications that fall within any of these categories, SES will be reviewing and providing detailed responses in compliance with the relevant legislation. The Planning Service and SES are also actively sourcing additional ecological capacity during this period to enable wider support to reduce delays and improve response times. Applications within back consultation zones will continue to require SES input, ensuring compliance with the Habitat Regulations 2017 and the NERC Act 2006. Through this triaged approach, we're actively working to reduce the risk of contravening other key environmental legislation, including the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 and Environment Act 2021 and the EIA regulations. Natural England, as our statutory consultee, continues to be engaged on relevant applications and will continue to be consulted. Their recommendations regarding protected species and habitats remain a critical part of the planning process and must be adhered to. The consideration of applications will continue to be undertaken in compliance with the EIA regs, Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, Habitat Regulations 2017, NERC Act 2006 and the Environment Act 2021. In respect of enforcement, the Council has appointed a principal enforcement team leader with oversight of the enforcement function for Somerset. This includes enforcement of conditions and legal requirements. The Council remains fully committed to safeguarding biodiversity and ensuring that planning decisions are informed by robust ecological evidence. Thanks again for your continued advocacy and dedication to protecting wildlife and promoting sustainable development.
Liz, thank you so much for the question, and thank you, Mike, for the answer. I also appreciate just if we could have an update at some point on what Dr. Parfitt referred to in terms of the site that we may be potentially looking at enforcement action near the Ramsar SSSI site. I think that's a particular issue that we need to make sure that is on our agenda, given other things. So if we can have an update on that at some point, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Happy to take that away.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rigby. Thank you so much for the public questions. And we now move on to questions from councillors to the Executive. The first question we have is from Councillor Adam Boyden, who I understand is not available. which the questions read, please can the executive ask the NHS in Somerset for a full explanation of the proposals to cut beds and whether these beds will be replaced by other services in Frome? And please can you ask the NHS to pause the plan until it can be properly and transparently removed with full consultation involving staff, local NHS partners and our community? I believe we have a response from Councillor Graham Oakes, is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. We'll be adding something because the situation's changed since yesterday. Somerset Council is working with the NHS Somerset to look at local provision for intermediate care, which includes how community hospital beds are being used both now and into the future. The proposal was due to come to adults and health scrutiny in July. This would have touched on the temporary changes in Frome, Bridgewater and West Mendip community hospitals. But due to the urgent issues relating to maternity care at Yeovil District Hospital, this was postponed by the Chair to enable adequate time for discussion. NHS Somerset are bringing a paper about wider community services to the next scrutiny committee in August. This is much broader than intermediate care. And to answer both questions, there is a full programme of work alongside this service redesign around patient and public engagement being led by NHS Somerset. This will include looking at how community hospitals could and may be used now and in the future to meet health needs within our communities. As such, it's not appropriate for Somerset Council to ask NHS Somerset to pause this very necessary work. However, Chair, the power of the executive and your chairing is incredible, because last night the NHS released a press release which gives all the details that the public have been asking for and gives a very clear explanation, not in detail, but in a clear explanation as to what the heck is going on. And it has to be very welcomed as they start, I think what they call the biggest, they've carried out the biggest consultation. The NHS, as part of their plan, was the biggest consultation the NHS has ever done, with 270,000 people taking part. And they have to be congratulated on that tiny consultation in local government terms. But we now have a lot more information. So the situation has changed since yesterday. My concerns about the fact we weren't being informed. I'm hoping all members got this last night. It arrived about 6:10 last night. So hopefully at least the members of the council and the public with the roadshows will get to know what is going on and what is actually the plan, which was my biggest concern. But I know Councillor Wakefield also wishes to comment.
Yes, I just wanted to add how pleased I am to see this coming out from the NHS, that they are now consulting the public, the big conversation, big NHS conversation or something it's called. So please do take part in that, those people listening. I just wanted to mention that I had already replied to Adam about this, and I said that the NHS have been invited to attend our next Adults on Scrutiny Health meeting, which is in Bridgewater on the 21st of August from 10 o'clock. The changes are very much the centre of our concerns, and it remains the responsibility of the NHS to explain clearly to their staff and the wider public their plans in relation to this community and other community hospitals within Somerset and the wider area, that some of them, including Frome, actually serve. It's not just Frome that it serves. And then I wanted to go on to say something else, which I don't know. Oh, here's it. I do have a doubt that they will agree to a pause, as my colleague has already said. They are under a strict requirement from government to redesign NHS services across the country and to submit their plans very soon, with implementation starting next April.
Oh, for heaven's sake, just that.
Councillor Hayward-Burt, just to let you know, your microphone's on. Thank you.
Apologies for that.
I think the NHS in some days is working slightly ahead of this timetable on some aspects, including the repurposing of some accommodation at community hospitals. I was informed recently that on one day that there were some 30+ community hospital beds across the county which were unoccupied on that day. This is most likely happening because patient discharge in some appropriate cases is now changing from transfer from an acute to a community hospital bed to discharge home with care provided where necessary, and re-ablement or other services, including hospital at home, which is NHS run, which is what we are all working towards in the best interests of patients and their recovery, and in accordance with their wishes too. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakefield. Councillor Slocum, you popped your hand up, and scrutiny's been mentioned. I wondered whether that was what you wanted to mention.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to say, just to clarify that point, please, I did not postpone any meeting in July. What we've said is they came to us in March and told us about the 10-year plan. And what we're doing is we had a pre-meeting with them yesterday, and we made it very, very clear, both Councillor Sully and I, that we want communication to go out as soon as possible to let everybody know exactly what the commission is. And can I tell you, we will be scrutinising this very thoroughly on the 21st of August. And it has been asked us to bring this forward, but I don't think that will make any difference. But what we will do is have a thorough scrutiny on every aspect, and we've made that very clear yesterday. And please be assured the scrutiny will do that job, sir. So I just want you to know that it is in hand. We are going to look at it thoroughly, and the 10-year plan does make sense because it's in line with Newton Europe. It's in line with what we've all agreed that the progress we want, our traveller journey. So I do think it's important that we keep on the same line, but no doubt at all, we will be scrutinising them thoroughly.
I have no doubt in yours and Councillor Sully's tenacity on this issue, and I'll look forward to tuning in to that scrutiny meeting. I'm sure it will be very illuminating.
It will. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leader.
Our next question is from Councillor Bob Filmer. Good morning, Bob.
Thank you, Leader. My question is as submitted in front of you. It's seeking greater detail on what basis the charging parishes and town councils has happened in use of car parks in their areas, to find out how this has operated in the past so that we can understand how that has informed the figures that has been built into this year's budget for the rolling out of this practice across Somerset.
And Councillor Richard Wilkins to respond.
Thank you, Bob. And I'm very happy to give a written response as you suggested, given that there's several detailed elements to the response. But I will say that your question really does highlight the need for us to undertake a parking review to ensure that we identify all the previous district and town council arrangements and worked to put in place a consistent, fair and transparent agreements across the whole council area. So thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Diego Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. This one's for you, Leader, I should say. So Somerset Council's been in a self-declared financial emergency for about 20 months in September 2023. So could you please set out the criteria or conditions by which Somerset Council will determine that it is no longer in a state of a financial emergency? Specifically, what financial or operational markers would trigger a formal decision to lift the financial emergency status?
Thank you for your question. So I'll answer both questions in parallel, if I may. So the council would no longer be in financial difficulty when it ceases to rely on government financial support or the use of reserves to set a balanced budget, and where there is no longer a risk of the Section 151 officer having to issue a Section 114 notice. And the rationale to declaring a financial emergency within that financial difficulty was the need to take emergency action to recover the position and avoid issuing a Section 114 notice. And this was action above and beyond which was already happening, hence the term emergency. Over the last 20 months, as all members will be acutely aware, we've done many things to improve our financial position, and I won't detail every action we've taken. But for example, we've exceeded the planned local government reorganisation savings by reducing duplication across the 5 predecessor councils. We've implemented an adult social care transformation programme, My Life, My Future. We have developed a single family view database that allows us to use technology and predictive analytics. We have invested and now extensively use artificial intelligence. We have worked with partners in our city, town and parish councils to develop assets and services. We've removed long-term vacancies from the staffing structure. We've reworked the medium-term financial strategy. We have implemented control boards covering spend, contract and establishment management. And we developed the next stage of the transformation journey that will bring us out of the current difficulty. More importantly, we have begun to embed the financial discipline, practice and controls that means that we have reduced the forecast overspends and delivered underspends. Because we've been able to improve financial control and embed new ways of working, we have already stood down some of these emergency controls that we implemented in November 23. And depending on the forecast outturn at the end of Q1, it is probable that I will recognise the considerable efforts by everyone working across the council and formally move us out of this emergency phase. And that paper will come to us in September. At this stage, we do not need to take further urgent action as we have a plan we are delivering against and that appears to be working. This does not mean we are out of financial difficulty. We still need to work hard to deliver next year's budget, but we do not need to take additional emergency actions to do so. Finally, the determination of the health of a council's finances and the adequacy of its reserves is a matter statutorily reserved for the Section 151 officer, who will consult as appropriate with other statutory officers and the lead member before arriving at a judgment. The Section 151 officer takes into account many factors before arriving at such a judgment, which form part of the budget setting process every year. There are many markers and indicators to consider which must be taken together, but Section 25 of the Local Government Finance Act 2003 requires that when a local authority is agreeing its annual budget and council tax precept, the Chief Financial Officer must report on the robustness and estimates made for the purposes of the council tax requirement calculations, and the budget includes an assessment of the potential financial risks facing the council and that the council has adequate reserves should those risks materialise. At this point, both the Section 151 officer and I are clear that the council has maintained adequate reserves to cover the risks we face at present, and a more full answer will arrive with you in writing. And next we've got Councillor Hayward Burt online. I know you're there because we heard you earlier.
Yes, indeed.
Good morning, Councillor Burt. How are you?
Connection here, apart from when I'm ranting, clearly. So if I dip out, you've got the written question. It's really about, obviously, from the part of Dorset borders, therefore, people, the decision they've taken, and we've been in contact with Richard already. And just want to know how the conversations are going with Dorset about how Somerset residents in our corner of Somerset can access those services.
Yeah, thank you. We lost little bits of that, but we got your question in writing, and I know I've had conversations with Councillor Nick Ireland, the leader of Dorset, as well behind the scenes. But Councillor Richard Wilkins is going to respond.
Thank you, Hayward, and I note that the work that you and Councillor Nick Clark and Sarah Dyke have put into this. Somerset continues to engage with Dorset Council regarding the impacts of the new booking system and charging system that Dorset household recycling waste recycling centres, particularly Sherborne and Shaftesbury, which are the nearest sites for many residents in the Blackmore Vale division. Dorset Council has confirmed its decision to implement a booking system at 4 of its 10 HRCs: Sherborne, Shaftesbury, Dorchester and Wimborne. This move is intended to manage operational costs and reduce cross-border waste inputs, which Dorset estimates cost approximately 60,000 per site annually. Data from Dorset indicates that 22% of waste received at Sherborne originates from Somerset residents. Dorset's justification for the booking system is twofold. Firstly, to reduce the disposal, handling and treatment costs associated for out-of-county waste. And secondly, to achieve operational savings by discouraging non-resident users, in other words, commercial users. In discussions with the Waste Service Officer at Somerset Council and Dorset officers, Dorset has expressed a willingness to explore options that would allow continued access for Somerset residents. These include a financial contribution from Somerset to support the operation of the affected sites, and should Somerset Council at any time in the future implement their own booking system, an undertaking to consider a reciprocal booking arrangement. Dorset Council plans to introduce a booking fee for out of county residents using its household recycling centres. This fee is intended to cover the costs of waste handling, treatment and disposal, but it's not yet confirmed, and Somerset has no control over its structure. Similar arrangements exist between Hampshire and Dorset, where Hampshire operates a booking system and receives financial contributions from Dorset Council. However, Somerset's comprehensive network of recycling centres already meet the RAP guidelines, with nearly all residential premises within a 10-mile radius of a site. This includes the residents of Blackmore Vale, who are served by approximate Somerset operated sites without the need for pre-booking. Given our already strong coverage of recycling centres and the financial pressures across our services, Somerset does not have the justification to provide contributions to Dorset. Somerset currently does not operate a booking system at its own recycling centres, which limits the feasibility of reciprocal booking arrangements. Somerset Council is continuing to monitor the situation and assess the operational and contractual implications of any potential contribution or system changes. Further updates will be provided as discussions progress.
Thank you. I understand it is a situation that is a little bit fluid still, and we'll hopefully we'll have some clarity.
Chair, can I ask a follow-up?
We don't normally allow, but if it's very brief, Hayward, that'd be fine.
Well, the brief one is: are we going to look at how many people from Dorset are using the Yeovil site? Because it's a silly argument to say, you know, we're using their services. Everyone's using our services. We pay for. People drive along our roads that they don't contribute to. So it's a thin argument. But are we looking at it as well?
I absolutely take your point, and you know, in my head was going through a similar conversation I could have with the leader of Devon County Council or North Somerset Council as regards Cheddar or Dulverton as well. I think this is possibly a conversation we need to have on a broader regional footprint. But let's leave it there. I do understand your point though.
Thank you very much.
So Councillor John Cook-Woodwin is next, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Conservative-run Torbay Council has an arrangement with Swissco and Able Enforcement Limited to swiftly remove unauthorised encampments from public land. This enables them to follow a clear, structured and robust process that can lead to clearance sites within as little as 6 days. In Burnham-on-Sea, we have seen repeated unauthorised encampments causing disruption to residents and to local traders, with concerns also raised about this council's response. Can the lead member explain what is being done to address this issue of repeated unauthorised traveller encampments in Burnham-on-Sea, and I believe also Bridgewater as well as of this morning? And what support is being given to local traders impacted, and whether she will consider adopting a more robust approach to tackle these unauthorised encampments like Torbay's.
Thanks very much for the question, John. I think we also have similar situations in Taunton and Yeovil, so it is a issue across the county. I've been in touch with the leader of Torbay to ask for his team to compare what we're doing, but I'll leave it for Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts to respond.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for your question. In relation to Torbay, all councils, regardless of their political leadership, have to follow the same legal process in managing unauthorised encampments. I believe that when we look at what Torbay is doing, it is no different to what we're doing, apart from the fact that they've outsourced some of the parts of the process that we have to follow. So we have our in-house cleansing team that go out and do the cleansing, and then we use bailiffs who we appoint as part of the legal process to undertake some of it. So that process is set out within legislation as to what we have to do. What we do need people to do is ensure that they report any unauthorised encampments as soon as they come across them. We've also got a really useful web page as to that legal process that we follow, and that is different to what you and I would follow if it was our own land, and the process as to what town, city and parish councils can follow. What we will do is put those links into the meeting minutes so that councillors can pass that on to residents as well, because that web page, I deal with many of those in the Taunton area, is very useful for our members of the public to follow. When there are repeated unauthorised encampments that we have seen across the area, I know that you've seen them in Burnham, we've seen them across the county. We do look to review the opportunities for different physical protections that we can put on site, while also needing to understand that we need to maintain access to our open spaces as well. There is a balance to be had. We do need a site in Somerset for transit accommodation. From that point of view, I've asked for a task force to happen to look at that. It's sad that we sold one off, or the previous administration sold one off at Western Zoyland in 2012. I know that Councillor Fothergill asked that question at the previous full council. There's been a follow-up email to myself, but assets have confirmed that that site was sold, and there is a small portion of land that is nearby that is in our ownership, but was not part of that traveller site that could be used. I think it's about us looking for that site. So if people can come forward with land that they feel is suitable, whether that's in our ownership or others, and alongside that, that the community would look to, support that as a site to be used, the task force can certainly look at that. I know that Diego has been in touch this morning in relation to the Bridgewater site, and as with all unauthorised encampments that we have, we will look to make sure that local councillors are kept up to date with that process. We are, however, in the hands of the legal system and the court system in order to being able to put dates in front of them. It's also a balance as well about, supporting the GRT community and living their lives as they wish to lead them.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do think there's a piece of work that needs to be done, possibly regionally as well with our council, so we can cooperate and work with our partners in the police to be able to ensure that our communities aren't impacted as much as they have been this summer. And I think this summer has been a particularly difficult one for these incursions. And we need to find a way that makes our residents feel safe when from these issues. And Councillor Lucy Triminal. Lucy.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. So at the members' briefing on emergency changes to the planning service that was held on the 24th of July, I asked whether parish and town councils would be formally notified of the imminent changes. I was told a communications pack was being prepared and would hopefully go out on Friday, the 25th of July. As you are aware, parish and town councils are a primary consultee for planning applications and spend a great deal of time evaluating them. I was therefore surprised to discover when presenting my report to one of mine following that briefing that they'd not received anything regarding the emergency changes to the planning system in crisis. What transpired was that the information was contained in an email from the LCN, which doesn't have planning responsibility within its remit, titled Parish Information Sheet. This did not draw the attention of clerks because it gave the impression it was a general newsletter rather than key information which would affect them and the people they represent. I would like to know why Somerset councillors were invited to a briefing titled Emergency Changes in the Planning Service, whereas parish and town councils had a parish information sheet with a statement headed Council takes action to tackle planning application backlog. You have to excuse me, I've got such a dry mouth. I would like to hear why the executive lead member failed to recognise the importance of clear, direct communication with town and parish councils, and why they did not ensure that the information was issued in a clearly titled email which drew their attention to the imminent and notable changes that are being implemented. Instead, for many parishes, the first they heard about these major changes was through the press. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and Councillor Mike will agree to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Just as member briefing sheets are issued to elected members through democratic services, the agreed mechanism through which parish clerks are briefed by Somerset Council is through briefing notes issued by members of our LCN team. A message was issued to all clerks at 11:54 a.m. on Friday the 25th of July, ahead of the launch of measures on Monday the 28th of July, and subsequent to the member briefing and issuing of the member briefing sheet. The subject of the message was Parish Information Sheet, Development July 2025, Council takes action to reduce backlogs in development management, which was intended to highlight the importance of the topic, and critically, we only issue briefing sheets when it's a matter of significance. The message also included the following introduction. Dear City, Town and Parish Clerks, please find attached Parish Information Sheet regarding Council takes action to reduce backlogs in development management. Somerset Council is launching a 12-week action plan from 28th July to reduce a significant backlog in planning applications. Temporary measures including limiting updates, reducing non-essential meetings and site visits, and introducing a triage system to speed up decisions. These steps are part of a wider programme aimed at improving long-term service delivery and address challenges such as staffing and system integration. Our elected members were briefed on this matter yesterday. This message clearly conveyed that significant changes were temporarily being made to our planning processes in a clear and direct manner. The briefing sheet contained an overview of the proposed measures, instructions on how to engage with the Council during the 12-week period, key messages and a summary of where to access additional information. All of this activity supplemented the guidance which was issued to elected members through the Teams briefing on Thursday the 24th of July, the day before, and member briefing sheet also issued on the same day. We can take the feedback on board and ensure that it is communicated to clerks that in future when a briefing sheet is issued, it should be cascaded and communicated to their council members at the earliest possible opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And we have a question from Susanna Hart, which I understand Dawn's going to read. Thank you, Councillor Denton.
Thank you very much. So a question from Councillor Hart is, could we please have an update on the status of the Zigzag building in Glastonbury, please? Following a public inquiry in April, the Planning Inspectorate has ruled in Somerset's favour, meaning the residents of the Zigzag building in Glastonbury have to leave within 9 months. If we do not, we'll skip to the question. Please, could we be informed how much in total has been spent on the former Mendip and current Somerset Council on legal action against Chris Black and the Zigzag building with regard to this? And question 2 is the defendant is supposed to be paying some of Somerset's costs. Has this happened? And then further with reference to my question to the exec on the 13th of June, please could we know whether Chris Hall has an update, and if Chris Hall could please be in contact with Councillor Hart directly. Thank you.
As Deputy Leader to respond.
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, these questions cover planning. They also cover communities for the PSPO. And as a local member who visited recently, I will take the answers today, and they will obviously also be provided for Councillor Hart in writing. So on 7A, planning enforcement officers have visited the Zigzag meeting and continued contact with Chris Black, the owner of the building and adjoining land, throughout 2025. Councillor Mike Rigby and I agreed that we should adopt a two-part approach, so continuing the planning enforcement and also allow Mr. Black and his son to work on the submission of a revised planning application for a community facility. My most recent visit to Beckery was just 10 days ago, and I was able to see firsthand the considerable clear up that has been completed in front of the Zigzag building, also on the 2 pieces of land owned by Mr. Black across Beckery Old Road. I'm quite happy to say in a public meeting that I was surprised and pleased to see the amount of the clear up. So a request will be made for written answers to the questions on legal costs and whether Mr. Black has made any contribution to those costs, because I don't have that information for you myself. On 7D, I have no doubt that Chris Hall, the Executive Director, would be willing to discuss this with Councillor Hart directly. And I would hope also Councillor Cottle as the other Glastonbury division representative. But the activity for a further PSPO for Glastonbury is under consideration with an experienced officer within the team rather than by Chris Hall directly. PSPO regarding dogs for the 5 former Mendip towns is now back in place for a further 3 years. And we are looking to city centre PSPOs for examples of where a stronger response may be possible within the parish boundary of Glastonbury. So I can inform colleagues and Councillor Hart that Bath and North East Somerset has a PSPO for Bath City Centre and Midsummer Norton, and I will include the link to that PSPO in my written answer. Sarah Dyke MP recently held a meeting in the Town Council chamber with local business owners, and she also met with the Police and Crime Commissioner on the same day. Both MP and Neighbourhood Police support an additional PSPO for Glastonbury to reduce street drinking and antisocial behaviour. We are also meeting with Bristol City Council next week to share learning on the opportunities for meanwhile sites that Bristol City Council is bringing forward for van dwelling in and around their city, where we have the same challenges in and around the town of Glastonbury. So written answer will follow direct to Councillor Hart. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for those member questions, and we move on to item 6, which is the executive forward plan. Any comments, questions or observations from lead members? Not seeing anything. Anything from other members? Again, not seeing anyone indicating. Which brings us on to item 7, which is the Somerset Energy Investment Plan. Just going to just ask members and members of the press if they do need to communicate, if they could do so outside the room, that'd be great, thanks. So brings us on to the Somerset Energy Investment Plan, and Councillor Graham Oakes to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. The Somerset Energy Investment Plan is essentially a continuation of the work that was started a number of years ago by the district councils and the county council. Now what we're seeing is a plan coming together that enables and encourages partnership working in a range of ways, particularly in the renewable energy sector. And for a local government report, I have to describe it as exciting. And I rarely use that with any reports from a council. This is a thoroughly good read. It's positive, it's encouraging, and I'm hoping that it will get the support of all members of the executive.
I'm looking at who's presenting because I've got Chris in my notes, and Chris is now pointing straight to James. So, so James, well, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm here today to introduce the Somerset Energy Investment Plan to Executive. I'll try to be brief. The detail is within the report, but there's a few points just to highlight within sort of the purpose of the report there. So the report is obviously to present the Energy Investment Plan to Executive, to note and consider the recommendations of the Climate and Place Scrutiny Task and Finish Group, and there's an appendices for that. To note the Energy Investment Plan actions delivered by the Climate Service to date. So there's been a number of key actions already achieved so far. And then obviously to seek Somerset Council adoption of the plan by the Executive. So just a few points. The Energy Investment Plan produced by consultants Regen aims to set out how Somerset Council might work with community energy organisations, the private sector and other stakeholders to invest and grow renewable energy across Somerset. The document is designed to act as an energy prospectus and an opportunity map for inward investment into the county in areas of solar power, heat pumps, electric vehicle use and onshore wind power, to name just a few. By aiming to encourage inward investment from the energy community and industry, the plan hopes to shape future work, both Somerset-wide delivery, as well as help shape and deliver Somerset Council's own journey itself. So the officer recommendation to executive stated within the report is the recommendations to executive committee is to adopt Somerset Energy Investment Plan, as well as endorse the recommendations shown in section 29 from the Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee to include these within the council climate service delivery plan alongside the energy investment plan. I've brought Cara along today as well, one of our specialists. Hopefully, if there's any questions, we can answer them between us.
Welcome, Cara. Any questions or comments from members of the executive? Sarah?
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this coming forward. I think it's a great piece of work, and it's really exciting for the council to see this written down and see pathways and milestones in the plan that we can actually look and see what's happening and when it's happening. I think there's lots of good ideas. There's lots of hope, because you have to have hope with this type of work. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it, I think. I just wondered about some things like we want homes to have EPCC and all that sort of thing, which the government are trying to push forward. Are we going to be able to get there on that? That was one of my questions. And you've got something about solar farm or solar development. It's proved very difficult to use commercial roofs for this successfully. I don't know whether that's moved forward. I'd be quite interested if there's been any progress with that. Certainly, we used to advise our clients not to let people use their roof because it's quite difficult to manage if it's a different person who's got that. If it's okay if it's an owner-occupier doing it, but if it's an outside company. So I wonder if there's been any progress in that. And finally, I'm really pleased about the tidal barrier thing that's also mentioned, because it's a really exciting project. We'd love some money for it. So if anybody's listening to this and wants to throw some money at a wonderful tidal lagoon project, that would be fantastic. We would really like to get that off the ground. Thank you.
I'll bring Cara in for a number of those points there as well, but just to highlight, obviously we're doing a lot of work with our housing team as well, with the retrofit fit of the public estate. We've also got an options appraisal which will come forward in the future around Saltlands and the solar opportunities there, especially linking with community energy. I will pass over to Cara because she has a lot more detail in terms of the subject matter expertise.
Thank you. And thank you for your question, Sarah, and your passion for which I'm also very passionate about delivering this. So EPCs indeed have been a kind of a trial and tribulation in terms of actually where they've been coming from. It's been very much linked to the kind of fossil fuel industry and hasn't really taken and adopted renewables as part of that process to improve them. That is actually changing at the top. So that should help to improve what EPC is coming out of for many properties. Also, that have started to put in heat pumps and solar panels already, help to improve that. And also, I think with some of the government ambitions to improve energy efficiency, that will also start to put some targets in to improve EPCs generally across the board. Our role is to obviously support and kind of campaign for that, because we know that helps to reduce things like fuel poverty, which is a really important thing this council wants to help to stop in our community. In terms of solar on commercial roofs, yes, you're right, there are some issues around who is the occupier of that, and if that changes, that can cause a little bit of confusion within that kind of lease and that taking that on. But most importantly to note, not all commercial industrial buildings actually have the structural integrity to be able to take large scale solar on. On top of that, it's about connecting to the grid, and in many areas where these industrial sites are, there's a lot of grid constraint already. So again, that makes it very difficult to put additional renewables in there. Community scale, larger stuff within the kind of peripheral of those kind of towns and villages, and support for supporting hybridization of renewables and food growing is very viable. That will help to support getting the maximum renewable energy delivery, as well as supporting food and biodiversity. That in fact comes out with a much better economic but also embodied energy in terms of delivering those projects for the outcome of decarbonised energy.
Just one other thing I forgot to mention. Quite a lot of properties in this county use oil for their heating, and there isn't really much of an alternative. Certainly, if you aren't suitable, as indeed my own house isn't, for air source heat pumps. I just wondered if there's any progress on that.
So a lot of work is actually going on to improve the efficiency of heat pumps, and what we're finding actually some of them are very viable in off-gas grid properties. Retrofit's really important to look at improving the energy efficiency of those properties, which helps reduce the energy demand. And actually quite often when you can't get oil in some cases because of supply, but also costs, lots of people are reverting to those very expensive electric heaters. So again, heat pumps become a much more economically viable solution for them as well. We're engaging with an organisation called Thermally. They do a online early survey of people's properties to find out if they're heat pump ready. They're supporting to connect people with local installers to kind of do proper surveys to see how and take those forward. There is a £7,500 grant from government at the moment to support heat pumps being installed, and so we're really helping to support that process too. We have a lot of heat pumps already in the community, and it's really great to meet those people to have their first-hand experience of what life is like for a heat pump, again to alleviate any of those sort of misconceptions about having a heat pump, particularly in those kinds of properties.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the report. It's really beautifully put together and acts like a prospectus. I can actually see how that would be the case. It looks really good and very exciting. I just nod to Councillor Oakes there that it is a very exciting paper. So forgive me, the question, and I've been concerned about this, the same questions that my colleague was asking around the numbers of homes that are reliant on solid fuel. But the one that which is lovely to read, and just to get a sense for you about the size of the problem, the kind of the blocking element of National Grid's capacity. Is that, just to get a sense from you about, what we should be doing as a council, if we can do anything about a council about that, who we can shout at, and what impact that has on how much we can actually achieve from energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for noting that some of it is infrastructure nationally that makes it difficult for us as a council to input into those changes. However, as consultees to Ofgem and the new RESP that they've put in place to look at strategic delivery of improvements to the infrastructure, but also looking at kind of different ways of achieving that, whether it's through linking battery storage and generation, for new developments, creating microgrids as a way to alleviate some of those pressures. But also if we can demonstrate the amount of development and requirements, particularly for industry as well as housing, they're looking at where in the country to improve some of those infrastructure requirements. We have a good relationship already with the DNOs. So we're building on that with the RESP. So that's a really important kind of three-way, because we've got 2 DNOs in Somerset, which is also challenging, but they're all very positive and proactive and looking at how we can really solve some of these problems. So the more that we're at the table to those conversations and say what it is that we're aiming to support in delivering that, the more they're going to help kind of look at the plans for that and invest in where it's required to improve those grid constraints.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to refer, first of all, to the best maps I've seen in years. They are excellent. So please, I'm sure colleagues feel the same. Pass on our thanks for that excellent work. I thought I knew Somerset really well, but I was learning much more by looking at those maps in detail. And I also wanted to reference the equality impact assessment, because of course this refers to fuel poverty and also the impact of physical works on the property, and of course as a council now with an HRA, as well as huge amounts of development in Somerset and private rentals as well. So just wanted to raise, if I may, the real importance of us working across the whole council's responsibility and ensuring that we work on this with HRA partners as well as private landlords, and particularly with developers, because that's where the really big opportunity is. That's a national thing, of course, not just a local thing, but yeah, and the maps. I'm sure we'll go back to those maps time and time again, and it will be really interesting. Probably won't be me, but in some years' time to actually look back at those maps and see what's changed in 5 and 10 years' time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just highlight one other thing that's in the report? I agree with all the comments that have been made, but also the contribution the scrutiny have made to this for the Task and Finish group. I think that's been really valuable, and it shows the importance of scrutiny in helping to formulate policy, and do appreciate all the members that were involved in that as well. It does occur to me with some of the issues raised here that these are issues that we're raising with government along with our partners in the proposed Wessex Strategic Regional Authority, certainly about being a hub for green energy for the whole of the country, but also that piece around energy infrastructure, which we know is a blocker on our economy in the southwest, as well as our ability to be able to achieve that. I love the ambition in this as well as the maps. I would echo Councillor Oakes' enthusiasm. Just going to move on to other members, not seeing anybody else indicating. So I'm going to go to Councillor Dave Mansell and then to Councillor Healy.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm pleased to note the positive response and the interest being given. If I may say, this is something that I've been very interested in for some time. Mike may remember that I was pursuing it at Somerset West and Taunton Council in his time as portfolio holder there. I was the chair of the Task and Finish group that worked alongside Regen in producing this report. If I may quickly mention the other members, Councillors Ashton, Bowden, Bradford, Hobhouse and Cravis also contributed. We were supported by an officer at the time, Jacob Hall, and then latterly by Cara, who's with you. I feel I should mention that Climate and Place Scrutiny actually approved this report in March 2024. So it's taken a little while to get before you, but I'm pleased that it has now done so. I agree with the comments made that I think this is an important strategic document. It's worth noting it also provides a pathway for energy towards net zero, and in that respect is important as well. Just a few highlights, if I may, which the Task and Finish group particularly wish to draw attention to. There were 10 council sites which have been identified as being suitable and good investments for solar and wind generation. So it will be important to follow those up. Another key aim, which the plan aims to encourage, is supporting the adoption of robust policies in the local plan, and those supportive policies will be very important. It also identifies opportunities for creating many jobs in low carbon heating and in the retrofit, installing insulation in existing buildings. With reference to one of the points made, there's a recommendation in the Regen report for a net zero heat village trial for an off-gas rural village. So another good thing to take forward. And as Cara indicated, heat pumps are actually suitable for most properties. So as we're learning more about them in the UK, they're much more common in other countries. We are realizing that they really do work, and they are the future. So we do need to look at that. We've had one now installed for nearly a year. It's worked brilliantly. So the council's been doing good work on decarbonising buildings. Hopefully that can continue as well. And the other thing, as the report mentions, it's important to be working with local communities in all of this work too. But pleased to see the positive response being given, and we'll be even more pleased to see what is recommended in the plan being progressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mansell, and thank you for all your work on the development of this policy. Do appreciate the input that you and the members of your Task and Finish group have made. Much appreciated. And you're absolutely right. It's the actions that follow that are the important thing. Not even though the maps are fantastic, it's the outcomes that are the most important. I've got Councillor Mark Healy next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Still interested, you'll be happy to know. A couple of things that sprung to mind, if I may. Did I hear you say that this council sharing its goals and desires with other councils in the southwest? If not, what I'd like to say is, are you sharing it with any other councils throughout the UK? It's important if you don't, because you cannot really work in isolation and expect to get results. And also, if I may, slightly controversial, but is the truth. If the UK achieved what it wants to do, which is net zero in the future, it would have less than 1% effect globally. So are you spreading it from the UK outwards? Because if we're going to achieve what we want to achieve universally, we have to share it with other countries as well. Just food for thought, and I'd like to, through you, Chairman, know your thoughts on what I've just said. Thank you.
Yeah, I can. First of all, yes. Can I assure you that that this is a key area of the emerging Wessex Partnership, but also of the Great Southwest economic partnership with business and with universities. So that those themes are very strong in that, and I believe that this government has also made its intentions clear in this space. So I'm going to pass the specific questions on to James and pick them up there.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are working with other councils. We're part of the board of the Net Zero Southwest Hub board as well. So in terms of our climate aspirations, we are, and we're also talking in terms of the ecological aspects of working with Nature Southwest and the creation of a new partnership Southwest Wise as well. So there's a lot of collaboration regionally. It's like you say, it's really important that we're looking at those economies of scale and collaboration across border. So there's a lot in that perspective.
Thank you very much. And I've got Councillor Bob Filmer.
Thank you, Leader. It was just a query relating, it comes on the Net Zero Pathway Key Milestones document, where it's talking about what we're planning to do. I just wanted to have a little bit more understanding as to, we seem to be highlighting onshore wind as a named method of generation and giving numbers to it. Looking at what's happened so far, it's noticeable that solar has taken the lion's share. And I think a lot of that has been because communities have been prepared to buy into solar power, when in sometimes they have been less keen to see 400-foot high turbines in their particular areas. It was mentioned by Councillor Mansell, taking local communities with us in terms of delivering this is essential. So are we potentially setting ourselves up with a conflict in that area? And again, I welcome the comment relating to the tidal. There doesn't seem to be a lot of mention about offshore wind, which again seems to be working well in other areas of the country. So it would be interesting just to have that feel as to that we're not setting ourselves up for a battle with our communities over onshore wind, which we've seen over preceding years.
Thank you for your concerns. Of course, it's very important we bring communities with us. I think previously part of the issues around delivering wind onshore is actually it was a top planning constraint, which is now starting to be elevated to enable more onshore wind to happen. It's the most cost-effective way of generating renewable energy. And actually recent polls have shown that the community is actually more willing and supportive of community energy-based wind. We've seen one of the biggest community wind turbines being delivered near Bristol, and that's had a huge effect on people wanting to engage and support wind within and local to their communities. So of course we'll be bringing and working with community energy, particularly in Somerset, to help deliver. And again, as you've seen on the map, there are only certain areas that we can deliver onshore wind to meet our requirements. But to note that we've already done a lot of solar, and wind actually is going to be far more effective in generating the renewable energy requirements that we need. We've got two very large wind turbines now. There's obviously one near Frome that hasn't been noted at the point of this mapping, but a lot of them are being repowered as well. So we're looking at potentially engaging with them to support, again, with community energy to deliver repowering in some areas where it already exists, to help, again, to reduce any concerns that we're going to suddenly cover all of our community and wind turbines, which we're not. But thanks for that question, and we'll be looking to see what is viable for all types of renewables to deliver what we need.
I'll let you come back briefly. In there, okay?
Okay, I don't want to get too much into the planning debate, but in terms of moratorium on onshore wind, the situation was that as long as developers could get community support for onshore wind, they could come in with applications. That's what's now been changed. But I mean, there was never a complete ban on onshore. It was you had to prove you'd got community support before you could put the application in.
I think Councillor Rigby is going to contribute to this debate. But I'm anxious that we don't end up in a cul-de-sac here.
No, I'll be brief. There was a moratorium. You had to have 100% community support. So if there was one objection, it didn't get built. It was an absolute nonsense, and I'm very, very pleased to see that ridiculous policy has been removed.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just on the offshore point, there is considerable investment coming into the Celtic Sea wind farm, which isn't in Somerset Council's jurisdiction, or yet, but certainly is in is within our thoughts with across the southwest, as we work with our partners across the peninsula. Diego.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions to Councillor Oakes, really, but also within the Task Finish Group paper that I saw, it did mention Councillor Dixie Darch. So just thanking her and any of the Councillor Oakes' predecessors for all the work they put into this as well. And no doubt Councillor Oakes also put in a lot of work into it too. My question kind of follows up from a point that Councillor Mansell made. I'm just noting the back of this document says that it's been issued in February 2024, and the Task Finish Group recommendations went through to the back March 2024. So my first question is, why has it taken so long to come to this committee for executive for it to be presented to this committee? Because some may argue this is an example of this council not acting at pace, but I'm sure there's valid reasons as to why it's taken 18 months to come to the executive. And in the summary of recommendations, pages 86, I think onwards, there's a theme in those recommendations where it says the council could, the council should, the council could, the council should, quite considerably over and over again. And there's not enough recommendations, I feel, that the council will do X, Y, Z rather than what they should and could do. So I'm only wondering, because this is what's happened with previous papers, is there going to be another paper coming forward with a breakdown of what's being done and kind of timeframes for delivery, so that we can kind of hold the people to account in that sense? And also, since the document was issued in February 2024, we have had a change of government with different ideas on climate agenda, etc. I'm just wondering if they've put any new policies out there, is that impacting, or has that impacted what's in this report, and is that fairly reflected in what you want to achieve as well?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the praise from Councillor Diego for me and the predecessors who did the real work on this project, particularly Dixie, obviously. The performance of Somerset Council over the last year has been affected by a whole range of issues, and it would be good if everything could have been done at pace. But I'm slightly surprised at the question, because of the fact that most of us have noticed that the council's gone through a major transformation during that time, and there have been consequences of that. And one of the consequences of that has been that some things have been delayed in reaching us. Councillor Diego is correct in the sense of that when as with the previous issue about the NHS that I spoke about, that things are ever changing, and that in fact the situation with the environment is becoming more crucial and more important and more scary by the day. But the council's report is essentially correct at the time of writing, but is a constant. It will be a living document. The question about whether it will come back, and well, it first has to be passed by the executive and go through the various things for there to be a follow-up document. But I can assure you that the executive will get regular reports on the progress. I share some. I would have preferred some of the recommendations to be slightly stronger. However, I'm not new to this ball game, and I understand that local government has a language that isn't the same as the public, and that when we say could and should, that often means will. And I can assure you that I will do everything in my power to ensure that as much of this is achieved as quickly as possible. And one of the reasons I say that is because of the quality of the officers who've been working, and their commitment to working in partnership with other organisations to achieve things that we have to achieve for our planet.
Yeah, thank you very much. As my portfolio holder has mentioned, there's been a number of challenges as we've gone through transformation. As you can see, there were other officers involved, and that's been part of the transition through that, ensuring that we are capturing all of those relevant actions and ensuring that we're not just delivering on this strategy, but aligning and mapping how it influences other strategies as well. So in future executive reports that we've got the vision document, we've got baseline assessments coming forward. It's really important that we not only align and map how this strategy fits with them, but also it's embedding it within the new service plan. You know, we've gone through transformation, we have a service in place, and we have now that service plan in place, so we can show and demonstrate evidence about not only what we're looking at, but how we're actually delivering at pace against these. As Councillor Mansell has said, there is a very, very, very keen interest from the scrutiny in place, the Climate in Place Scrutiny Committee on this work, and no doubt part of the forward plan will be about how we are progressing against these work streams. It's something I will work obviously with the chairs to ensure that is within that forward plan. I've mentioned about the delivery plan. There will be the monitoring review, not just with Climate in Place, but obviously with my portfolio holder and update reports to executive. This, the strategy for me actually sets as a baseline. It is that, you know, opportunity map, it is that prospectus. It will evolve, it will adapt, especially with new government policy, with new opportunities across Somerset as well. So that service plan will evolve and adapt. You know, for me, it's not so much about the strategy, it's about how we deliver now. I have a very passionate team, as you can tell. I've got one sat next to me who are keen to get on with this now and deliver. So I feel confident that over the next 12 months, we will be able to showcase progression.
Thank you. Councillor Woodman.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's about the Bristol Channel. I've sailed in it for a number of years, and there's more power there than anywhere else I've ever seen. I've seen the problem quite often is the fact that we go for these big projects and then you've got to have big funding. But what we need is a modular system. So we can have turbines, we build one, then we build another one. We've got fantastic engineering in Bridgewater. We've got turbines that can be built in Yeovil. We could make this a real Somerset project. So I think we need to stay away from these big capital ideas and go to much more modular program, and then I think we could get interest from the industry and go forward at a much faster pace than we could if we rely on huge capital projects.
Yeah, I'd be interested in a response on that. Yeah.
So I completely agree. It'd be really supportive to look at the tidal lagoon project, which actually are the idea of putting a number of them around the coastline, chasing the tide that comes in twice a day, second highest tide in the world. So of course that is a superior way of generating energy. But it will be tapping at a slightly different level of our energy requirements. It may not generally support our community directly. It will go at another level, supporting more broadly in energy, and therefore that needs to be supported in parallel with our local energy generation as well.
Yep, thank you. You know, I know that there are conversations that are going on with partners around the potential, and that have been for some considerable time, but I think we're probably closer to landing a solution that uses tidal from the Bristol Channel than I think we ever have been. I really look forward to that. I'm really sorry, Lucy, I did say that we do it. I need to keep the time, so we are going to move on now. So can I just highlight the recommendations for you, that we adopt the energy plan as well as endorse the recommendations in section 29 from the Climate in Place Scrutiny Committee and include them within the Council Climate Service Delivery Plan along the Somerset Energy Investment Plan. Can I see a proposer for that? Councillor Oakes, seconded by Councillor Wilkins. Can I see all those in favour, all those against? Thank you so much. Which brings us on to item 8, which is our dedicated schools grant deficit management plan. And I will, my apologies, Cara and James, thank you so much for your passion and all the hard work that's gone behind that. Thank you. So item 8, Councillor Heather Shearer to introduced first, I believe.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks so much. And if I may, just while I've got the microphone being really incredibly cheeky, could I just check whether we gave an apology at the beginning of the meeting for Joe Roundell Green? Thank you. I couldn't hear it. So no, great pleasure to be introducing what's essentially two companion papers. Oh yeah. Only in this job have I quietly spoken, so I'll keep the microphone as close as I can. So great pleasure to be introducing two companion papers, both the main paper on the deficit management plan, which is that most important issue that we are facing along with our colleagues in other councils, but then also a very helpful report from our Children's Scrutiny Committee, who had an extraordinary meeting in order to give feedback and real consideration of this before we brought this before the executive. So we have A and B. So I'm just going to make a brief introduction, and I'll pass over to, I've got Amelia Walker, who's our director online, and she'll take us through some slides, and then I think we'll probably look at, if I've got this right in terms of melding these two papers together, then we've had the presentation from Amelia, and put me right if I'm wrong. When we've have the presentation from Amelia, we'll then consider the recommendations from scrutiny and then open up to the wider recommendations in the paper. So just to start, if I may, I do want to start by thanking a number of colleagues. It sounds a bit like the Oscars speech, but this is genuinely important. You would expect me to say that Children's and Finance have worked together tirelessly on this, and they really have, and I'm indebted to all of them for that. But also we have great input from People Too, who are an independent consultancy who have worked with us on our approach to this, so that we have some assurance from having that independent view that's referenced throughout the paper. I think also, though, again, if I may say, the scrutiny committee, who have been fabulous. That was a very effective scrutiny meeting. I'm sorry, I don't think Lee, the chair, is online, but it was a very good bit of work done by scrutiny again. But then also, I think we need to also reference some of our wider partners around the schools, education, partners outside of the council. So I want to say thank you to those for the contribution. I think also to acknowledge as well, if I could, the risk and importance of this particular paper. It's really critical. It's risk because, of course, we are carrying, through the deficit, something which will be very quickly not sustainable, even though we've had our reprieve for not taking the override away. The statutory override away, but this is something which is really important. But it's also, it's a risk to us, which we need to give it real focus, and I'm pleased to see it's there. But also, it's the importance, because if we do all of the things that are in our deficit management plan, we will be making a huge difference to children and families and our education partners and our social care partners. If we get this one right, we'll make a huge difference. So it's massively important to do this. I'd also just say, and I'm sure that Amelia will make this even clearer through the presentation, but this is the overarching kind of starting point. This is going to be a long-term transformational plan. And so what you're seeing here is the overarching view, which will come in the presentation, and the first action plans and business plans we need to bring before you to approve, and then there'll be more work to follow. So you may see more of these in the months and years to follow. But I'll shut up now and leave it over to Amelia, who's on screen, and she'll take us through the presentation that's been shared.
Okay, thank you very much, Heather, for the introduction. Is it Amelia next? I've got a whole list on my chair's notes of people to come in, so I'll bring in Amelia next.
Thank you. I'll just say very, very briefly, huge thanks to everyone who has contributed to this. And can I just apologise for not being there in the room? I am coming to you from a lake in France. So if there are any connectivity issues, if someone will just put up their hand, and we will do some behind the scenes negotiations to make sure that we can present. Huge amount of work has gone into this. I'd just like to recognise colleagues in finance who've worked tirelessly alongside us in education, but this is a cross-council enterprise. And I'd also like to thank all the colleagues from Scrutiny who dedicated full 3 hours a few weeks ago to scrutinising this, and we will see that later on the agenda. This is very much a learning process. I will take you through as we go through the elements that we're asking for decision for today. but we are essentially taking bites of this mountain, and there will be a number of future decisions coming to this committee as we go forward, and we'll outline those in the presentation. I'll also just say, as we begin, this is very much dependent on the expectation that there will be a white paper from the government in the autumn. There are limits to what we can do in local government, but we are absolutely pushing those limits as far as we can within the boundaries of what we can do as a local authority. I hope that this will present, if it doesn't, because it seems to be moving relatively slowly, my colleague Andrew will support with that. If you could just let me know if that's...
we can. Yes, thank you very much. We can see the presentation, and I'm pleased to say it's in English as well.
Fantastic. So, is it moving forward though? One moment. So we have a presentation, but not one that wants to advance. There we go. Just slightly slowly. So I'm going to start with the SEND strategy. We do have a SEND strategy. It's due for renewal in the coming year. The deficit management plan that I'm about to take you through is very much linked to that strategy, which is co-produced with parents, carers, and with children. So we have maintained those areas of focus because it's important that this be rooted in children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities above all else. And that key message that they gave us, not for me, with me. So, and this is very much focused on a better system for children. So we will be talking about money today because money matters, but this is not about reducing the quality of the experience for children, because a better system is a less costly one, and too many of the costs that we're bearing at the moment are as a result of children not receiving the education that is their due and that they need to progress. So our evidence does tell us that a better system for children reduces the cost of the system overall. This is a strategic plan, and it sits on some strategic elements, which we'll touch on as we go through our nationally leading programme around data and digital and information sharing called Transform Family View. Transform Family View is so innovative that we are being funded in children's services to develop this alongside other local authorities and to enable them to learn from our experience, particularly around data sharing protocols, which are country leading. We are heavily invested in neighbourhoods and localities and very encouraged by the wind that seems to be building in this space. We have, alongside other council teams, recently reorganised, and in education this was very much a root and branch change and has brought us so much closer to colleagues in children's social care, so that we are generally an integrated children's services team, but there's much more that can be done that we are focusing on in this plan. Around supported employment, and I'll say more about that, and the importance of destinations, around our sufficiency and having enough places, and this committee has already taken a decision in that regard, but there will be more hopefully to come, and also about flexible education, and I'll touch on that, and we have already publicly consulted on some of these principles to date. So they're very much pillars of what you will see coming through this plan. I'm going to pass to Nicola Hicks to just take us through some of the critical numbers underpinning the plan.
Thank you, Amelia. So as the slide in front of you shows, we have the dedicated schools grant on the top line that comes in. We have the forecast expenditure, and therefore the next line down shows the in-year deficit. The cumulative deficit is one that members will recognise. So the forecast deficit as it presently stands for 25-26 is the 96.796 million, which is reflected in the month 2 report before yourselves as well. This shows that if we do nothing, and just on the projections that we're currently using, we'll show a forecast cumulative deficit of 294.6 million by 29-30. The next line down shows that with some investment to deliver this DMP in a cumulative value of 1.713 million by 29-30 will enable us to do those project work streams to reduce the forecast deficit, to give that revised in-year deficit surplus up as it shows in the table in the next line down. What it does show though is that if it goes to plan, and I would say if, because it's a very high risk plan and there's a lot of dependencies in here, we'd be looking to create a forecast surplus in 28-29 of the 2.911 million. However, that doesn't mean that we get rid of the deficit that we have in place, because the next line down shows the cumulative deficit. So it just means that in year, the work that we would do to reduce the deficit in year and create that surplus would have a positive effect on the cumulative deficit. But by 29-30, we're still looking at the council having a deficit of 106 million pounds. So this isn't about mitigating it entirely. This is about doing what we can to try and bring that forecast deficit down by implementing this plan to help our position. And as Amelia stated, in line with waiting for what comes out in the white paper that should come out. We go to the next slide, Amelia. So the next slide down just shows the People2 recommendations in the table. These are the number references the recommendation in the appendix. It shows the part year total investment required there, full year and ongoing. This means that for 25-26, we want to create some investment now to get going with this plan. And therefore then it shows what existing resources we can allocate to the plan. However, there are some new funding needed, and on the right hand side of this slide it shows that new funding requirement will be a general fund requirement of 455,000 in year, which is the request that is being made as part of this paper to come from the contingency. Any future investment in the DMP plan can't be agreed by executive. That is a full council decision. So this paper will have to follow on to full council to enable that decision to be made on future years funding. But I think the important thing is we are wanting to get that approval for in year so that we can get going with this plan. We can start implementing some of those recommendations as quick as we can. As the bottom of the table shows, we are looking to anything that we can fund through the transformation fund or flexible use of capital receipts, and we're doing that assessment. But at the moment, that's the figures as it looks. We go on to the next slide, Amelia. So this slide just shows that cumulative investment that is needed, and also shows the cumulative savings there forecast for up to 29-30. What the table does on the right hand side is links that saving to the recommendation in the People2 workbook, which is one of the appendices, and it links the expenditure. Some of the expenditure is about posts that we need to get to implement the plan, and more enabling, so they can't be attributable directly to just one recommendation. They are an enabling function to enable us to deliver the plan, whereas there's some other expenditure needed to deliver set recommendations that are more specific. The team have done a lot of work to analyse what can be funded from the high needs block, what can come out of that dedicated schools grant. We've also got some funding there where we've identified within our existing capital programme there's already some money that's allocated here, so we can utilise that as well. What this table shows is when we invest, that projected return on our investment is quite significant there. For 25-26, we're looking at £1.90 for every pound we've invested, up to £9.40 for every pound we've invested up to 29-30. So it's quite a significant return on investment there, should we go to plan. And I think the key is the monitoring of this plan, and finance will continue to work closely with the service on how we monitor the achievement of this plan, and kind of bring back to members regularly any iterations to the plan that may be needed to guarantee that we are on the right track. The next slide down, Amelia, if you just go to the next slide, is just a summary of that return on investment. I'm not sure if you've moved it, Amelia, but it's not showing as moved on the screen.
Yeah, apologies. It's just give it a moment.
There we go. Got here eventually. So that just shows the cumulative savings forecast there and the cumulative investment to get that return on investment, just as a summary table there. Okay, Amelia?
Great.
Back to you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to take you through the plan itself. There is a huge amount of detail behind this plan. As Nicholas said, there are a lot of unknowns in this space. And one of the reasons we have reached this acute situation financially is because of the level of unknowns, things that we simply don't know what will work. There's a lack of established practice in this area. It's a growing concern nationally. But we are using the best advice that we can, and we are working as strategically as possible to give the plan the best chance of success. The oversight of the plan is multi-agency, and you can see there the key leads, which span a number of council areas, not just Children's Services, myself and Richard Selwyn, also from Children's Commissioning, but from NHS Somerset and Emily Fulbrook from Adults and Health. And the plan also takes into account some of the recommendations and requirements that have been set by other accountability organisations, such as Local Government Social Care Ombudsman, issues arising out of the recent Joint Thematic Area Inspection of Serious Youth Violence, and as indicated earlier, the People 2 Deficit Management Plan review that took place recently. The first area of the plan is called Working Together, and just at a high level, some of the areas of focus and a critical area of focus is around alternative provision and independent non-maintained special schools. This is an area of very, very high spend, some critical services being delivered for children, but making sure that we have those frameworks, quality assurance and rigour around this area is a key piece of work for us going forward. If the plan is agreed. Neighbourhoods and localities is very much an enabler. That's about multi-agency professionals working together. And engagement in the local offer is about the information and engagement that we provide for parents and carers. Children and their families are critical players in this endeavour. As I mentioned earlier, data and digital, particularly the use of Transform, but not only this, we have previously touched on the importance of AI in reducing the administrative burden, for example, for some of our teams, and the role of things like joint commissioning for making sure that we are getting the most impact for our investment. Andrew, is it possible for you to take over sharing the slides, because there's a delay on moving them forward, which...
Yes, we'll do.
Apologies, colleagues. Andrew will share those for a moment, so we're not unduly delayed, because I think that's the byproduct of being abroad. While we're waiting for that, the decisions that relate to this area, we are already implementing a locality model. Those decisions were taken as part of the overall council restructure. And we have identified resources that have already been allocated to support our inclusion advice line. We are asking the executive to take a decision around supplementing our capacity around transactional finance, and we would be bringing forward further decision making around alternative provisions, our pupil referral units and behaviour partnerships in the autumn term, as well as working with colleagues corporately to scope and cost a digital system. We've identified that financial decision making and transactions are in need of improvement and review, but that would require further decision making and consideration. If you want to just go to the next slide, you can just see there, that's the locality model that we're moving forward on. There are 12 neighbourhoods, and the education and joint health and social care teams are working on a 6-area model. And we're very encouraged by the response that we're getting from other players, not just across the council, but in health, with the police and with the voluntary sector through Connect Somerset. Getting help early is about prevention, and it's about making sure that our investment is resulting in reduced need. Speech language communication is emerging nationally and internationally as a key area, and making sure that we have a really clear offer, and this would be linked to our joint commissioning strategy as well. Culture and practice is something identified by the consultants who advised us, and something that we've been working on for some time. And particularly, we are very aware of the rising number of concerns and complaints, not just to the council, but across the system, and making sure that we can resolve those in a productive manner. Assessment and identification is something that the Education for Life Best Start in Life group has been working on for 2 years now, of identifying key areas where we can join up across agencies to better identify need as the earliest point. And we have been very encouraged by a range of stakeholders, including not just council services, but those in the voluntary sector and in our communities, around enrichment and wraparound activities, but making sure that children have positive things to do regardless of their need. We are already expanding our virtual school capacity post reorganisation, and there is resources that have been identified that can from the government, from a central government grant, that can be allocated to this. We are looking today for a decision around additional capacity around the management of complaints and tribunals, and we would be looking forward to bring a further decision on the analysis of the demand pressures, understanding and discussing at this committee what the drivers are of demand and what interventions further might be needed to manage demand going forward. I've touched on Transform already. It's a key enabler, and really that's about connecting professionals. It's about sharing information appropriately and within legal data protection protocols, but it really is a transformational initiative. It enables professionals to share information about children in a timely manner, but also to be able to predict issues that might arise in the future based on information that we have, so that we can proactively bring in support at the earliest possible stage. Access to the right support and provision. Colleagues will know that Somerset has historically been an area where a large number of children with special educational needs and disabilities have been excluded. There is a strategic approach to reducing exclusion, which I'm pleased to say we can already see is having some effect, and that will be an area of the plan going forward. What this committee has previously considered sufficiency of school places, and a programme is already underway for September, but the intention would be to bring forward further decisions to expand that, as well as supporting schools who wish to improve their provision, and the response we've had from professionals has been exemplary. We need to continue to improve and streamline the delivery of education, health and care plans. We'll be looking closely at what the government is likely to bring forward in the autumn term, as well as looking at our SEND funding and financial arrangements, again, something we would wish to bring forward. So in summary, what we're looking for, if you want to just move that forward, Andrew, is to continue to deliver the SEND units and within existing capacity, to expand the capacity in some key areas using resources that have been made available. But we're asking for a decision today to provide support for school-based delivery, what we describe as Mainstream Plus, which is that additional support within existing schools, as well as our special school outreach. And then we'll be bringing further decisions in the coming months around Section 19, which is a critical area of the law and funding, around further SEND capital decisions and the high needs, the government grant, the high needs capital allocation that the council receives, as well as looking at our SEND funding framework, including our banding system, which is how we allocate to individual children's education, health and care plans. You can see there, this is the existing plan in relation to expanding provision for special educational needs and disabilities. We have pupil referral units, autism resource spaces, and special schools with satellites already in the system. You can see the distribution there. We are opening new SEND units and expanding those mainstream schools that deliver that form of provision starting in September, but that will be a rolling programme through the rest of the academic year and beyond. But we will be looking for further decision making in relation to next phases going forward. Flexible education is something that has received, as a concept, strong support from practitioners, from parents and carers. And effectively, it's about rethinking how children can be educated outside of mainstream, with a focus on getting them back to education, particularly where they experience crisis and are no longer able to attend for a period of time. So we'll be bringing back further decisions to look at how we can integrate some of the work around alternative provision, but also our pupil referral units. And there is a consultation currently running around the first stages of potentially reorganising pupil referral units. Finally, preparing for the future, looking at our framework. Relationships are all important in this area. This is why this is led by Emily Fulbrick from adults within the council, but supported employment and post-16 is an area where it's clear that there are insufficient options for every pupil, and putting in a preparatory pathway so that pupils are able to undertake a supported internship, which has the evidence is brilliant around supported internships. Nationally and locally, we're seeing an 80% success rate of permanent employment, including with children or young people with some very, very high needs. So this is an absolutely pivotal part of the plan. But housing also is a key area that we're looking to develop those strategic relationships further to understand the transition into adulthood. So the key area that we would be bringing forward, not asking for any decisions today, but to look at that review of post-16 arrangements, which we are proposing to bring forward in the spring. You can see supported employment is hugely supported by a very large number of organisations within the county. We are very fortunate for the range of supported internships that are already in play. There is significant opportunity to extend that further, but we are looking for the evidence base of the first few months of operation of our new supported internship team, which came into place in the 1st of April, but we will be looking to bring that forward back to this committee. And finally, when we had the external review from People2, their view and recommendations made was that there needed to be greater capacity to manage the depth and breadth of this really quite extensive programme. And you've seen the numbers from Nicola, you've seen the extent and the range of work involved in delivering this. We're asking for decisions today, if you want to go to the next slide, Andrew, to enable us to take forward expanding that capacity for oversight and programme management. The structural transformations were already agreed, and we have already revised the programme structure in line with the SEND strategy. Those elements will continue, and the SEND strategy will be looking to bring back to this committee. But we are looking to take decisions to enable the additional capacity to go forward to full council. So that's the overview of the programme as a whole. I'm very happy to take questions, but also I think just to re-emphasise, this is very much a work in progress. There is a great deal for us still to learn, and there will be a number of decisions that we'll be looking to bring back to this committee over the coming months. If we tried to give you an indication of those, they are listed in the paper. We don't have everything within our gift that we need to affect the transformation that is required, but I'm very encouraged by the noises that we're hearing nationally. We will be reviewing every aspect of the plan if and when central government brings forward a white paper with plans for further reform.
Okay, Amelia, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. I'm very aware that we've got feedback from scrutiny as well on our paper, and I think now would be an appropriate time. And I did have a message from Councillor Redmond this morning to say he's got work commitments and may not be with us. I'm trying to just check. Councillor Redmond, are you online? No, it doesn't look like he is. Do we have a response to the scrutiny feedback? It is detailed in the report.
Thank you so much, Chair, and sorry for directing us in different ways earlier on when I introduced the papers. It's quite complex papers. Just want to say, obviously, I'm a poor substitute for the chair of scrutiny being here, but I was really pleased to be at the meeting, and a lot of the people in the room were actually at that scrutiny meeting, which looked at the DMP as presented in some detail. Obviously, the scrutiny team, or scrutiny committee, came out with 5 recommendations, which, as the chair says, are very clearly identified in 8B. I think what's helpful to look at is also, it's not the only thing, but certainly to some of the answers which will help me give answers to them is actually on page 207, which is the financial implications of those. It's a real sanity check on what we can do and how we can do it. So certainly this is 217 on ModGov, but it's in essence, it's saying that all of these things can actually be and should be considered. Things I would say would be that, let me go back to the other bit where it's actually in full. Oh, no, I've got it here. So for instance, keep me going around in circles. Here we are. So sorry, that's the right way around. Yeah. So indeed, the first inquiry, the first recommendation was about that the SEND strategy and associated action plan should be updated to reflect this proposed DMP. We would have no problem with that. This would be part of what we'd be doing anyway to make sure that everything, the SEND strategy is top line and is completely complementary to what we're doing, and it would just be the actual delivery that which we'd be working through anyway, that would need to be updated. My colleagues online will keep me right if I get this one wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is something that we would have no problem with. Undertaking lobbying is something that we would continue, and through LGA, through our I'm trying to think of the acronym for it, but the Association of Directors of Children's Services, obviously we'll be doing that kind of work. There'll be lots of ways in which we would continue to lobby, and I think that's the right thing to do. Number 3 is establishing a member-led programme for monitoring. Nicola Hicks mentioned, and forgive me for not name-checking you earlier, Nicola, but Nicola made a very clear point, and we're all very aware that the close monitoring of this programme is really key. So I think what we need to do with that, and I'm sure it can be accommodated, I'm sure, but I think when we're putting together the governance process, we need to do 2 things really. One is to make sure it's absolutely comprehensive and it's timely, but the other one is that it needs to fit and should have member involvement, obviously. But I think it also needs to fit with our target operating model and our values that as expressed in our transformation work, which is that we need to do it in a very clear way, which means that we are not we're monitoring but still enabling decisions to be made quickly, course corrections perhaps, or improvements or changes, so that the governance is very clearly defined and not overly onerous, to the point where it becomes, it actually stops us rather than supports us. So that'd be my only comment, I think, on number 3. Number 4, I will check this out with Lee, but my understanding from the meeting we were in subsequent conversations, where he's talking about data sharing and reference to the Transform Family database, or the leading Transform Family View program, that is only as good as the data that goes into it. It harvests data from another of our systems and partner systems. And as an example, we have a Capita program, which is one of our base case management programs, work management programs, but does not automatically or reliably receive information from schools on attendance or inclusion, which is in order to be both fully aware, you're supposed to harvest like a meta system, you're supposed to harvest all the data. If some of that data is missing, then it's hard to make good decisions. And similarly, to really get that predictive quality, which we're all very aware of, there's predictive ways we can work out who might become not in employment, educational training, or who might be at risk of coming into care, or might be at the risk of exclusion. We need all of the data in order to do that. So I think number 4 might just need the assurance I'd be looking for really to support number 4 of the recommendation, is that we as an executive understand and prioritise work on the systems within our control, like the Children's Services system, to ensure that they are delivering what they need to deliver for the Transform Family View and data sharing to work. I'll leave that up to the group to think is that's the way we do that. And then I think number 5 also is, I think number 5 is around ensuring that we have, or that the executive give weight and seriousness and support the need for the right level of resources to get early help correct. And I think early help is something that's obviously very clear in this presentation, but it's also very clear in, if you look in the transformation papers that went to scrutiny last week, we very clearly identify things which is savings and efficiencies in one appendices A. Then you have Appendix B, where you're looking at changes within our capacity, and then you look at number C, where we need the transformational work. And early help runs through all of those appendices. So and every time anything that's over and above in this paper, we would obviously bring business cases for. So that's my kind of take on where those 5 recommendations are, and I would fully support them with just those tiny tweaks around a little bit more detail, say on number 4, I think it was. Thank you.
Okay, so would you accept that if we put in a new item 7 to broadly accept those recommendations from scrutiny? I think we need to acknowledge the hard work and value added from scrutiny into that, and I do appreciate there are some. There was more detail and context, and we need to flesh out what some of that means. But I do welcome the input there. So moving back to the substantive, I've got Councillor Mike Rigby and Councillor Liz Leighton have indicated they wish to speak. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I preface what I'm about to say by thanking everyone involved with producing the DMP, obviously members and officers. I think some really good work in here in how we kind of mitigate the issue that is before us. But I have to say, it does kind of have the feel of voodoo accounting that the government's forcing us into. We're effectively being asked to ignore the problem. Don't worry, just ignore it. We won't hold you to account for it. And that feels instinctively wrong to me. And I'm very pleased to hear from Heather that we are continuing to use all avenues to lobby government to properly take account of this issue. It's another example of another government failing to understand the funding pressures that local government is under. And until government takes that seriously and fixes the issue that we all face as councils in this respect, we're going to struggle with this. But as I say, thank you for all the efforts put in to get us to this much better position.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. And I think I will actually just blow my own trumpet a little bit for the evidence I gave to the Select Committee on the sustainability of local government finance. They directly quoted me on this issue, where I used the slightly colourful language of issuing Section 114s like confetti if the government don't step forward. This plan gives a solution here, but it's not without possibilities to go wrong. I think there is a wider point that you make very wisely about how there is a general point about local government finance and sustainability around these issues, and also around those issues with adult social care, and also the general unfairness of council tax. I would recommend the conclusions of those report. It's a right riveting read. Over to Liz.
Thank you, Chair, and obviously from a finance point of view, I have to say how incredibly important this is to the sustainability of Somerset Council. And how it is not only aligned with government thinking, but I would say in places ahead of government thinking. And so I pay tribute to the officers across children's and across finance who've been able to bring this together as a really complex piece of work. I was also able to attend scrutiny and was glad that I did, because I needed to understand 2 things particularly that might be useful to colleagues. One was that if you were working in an ideal world, you'd have the white paper, then the SEND strategy, and then the action plans for each council. However, we are not in that place, but we are in a much better place by leading on this DMP. So thank you again. I also want to raise, as I did at scrutiny, the importance of the capital funds. So on page 154.62, colleagues can see that inclusion of very considerable capital funds from government for the high needs block. And without that capital investment, of course, this whole plan would not be able to manifest itself in the way we wish to see. And again, Chair, if I may, I want to reference the Equality Impact Assessment on page 160 and the early date for review in that, which I think we need to take that review date along with the recommendations for scrutiny and make sure that we have a coherent plan for how we feed. Well, we go to council, of course, with the plan, but also how we feed back to executive and feed back to scrutiny to make sure the EIA is included in its review as well as everything else. And if anybody eagle-eyed has noticed that on the header for the cover report, it says executive member, lead member for children and families. It looks as if I've put in a takeover bid for Heather's portfolio. I can assure everyone that is absolutely not the case. But I would like to say, Chair, how much I have welcomed the work across finance and children's and being able to work with my colleague Heather, because this has been a really massive piece of work. And although there are pound notes all over the papers, I can assure you it is Heather who has led me in my understanding, and I thank her for that. And I also thank Nicola and her colleagues who have worked incredibly hard through this summer. The days of no meetings in August are long gone, colleagues, long gone, but this is very good work and I'm really glad to see it at executive this month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do notice it's in fact your evil twin that has taken over the portfolio. Lix Lyshon. I'm sure that typo will be corrected. Sarah.
Yes, I just wanted to say from the point of view of someone who is not an expert in this subject, but having looked at all the work being done, I also am amazed at how broad it is and there's so much scope there. I'm pleased to see about the supported internships, flexible education, early help, neighbourhoods. There are so many parts of what we do in the council which are covered with this because they come into so many aspects, and obviously I'm particularly interested in what we do for the people who are moving out of school and into work. I'm really pleased to see that we're working hard on that and also on the housing aspect. Just like to emphasise to people, certainly with adult social care, it's the same with children's. It's a moving target because the government keep changing what they're doing. We don't know how much money we're going to get, and the children themselves are growing and changing all the time. So it's a continual review of where they've got to. So it's a really, really tough task. And I just wanted to say publicly, and I'm sure that this has been made clear, but there has been information about pupil referral units recently published, which gave a confusing idea of it. There are 4 pupil referral units in Somerset. There are going to remain to be 4 pupil referral units, but they're going to change the way they manage them. And I just think I want to correct anything in the press that said we were closing, because we are not closing them. And if I'm wrong, please say so now. Thank you.
Hey, can I just seek advice either from Alan or Scott on the scrutiny recommendations, whether we can include as an amendment that we accept them, or whether we need to respond, or in fact Duncan's drawing as well. It's like it's like 3-part harmony, I'm sure.
I'll start, Chair, excuse me. I'll start, and I'm sure colleagues can join as we go through. You should consider each of these recommendations in turn as an amendment. So essentially, will executive accept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you go through? So that's the first step. And whilst I have the mic, in terms of some advice associated with this, I would suggest that on item 3, particularly in terms of the member-led programme board, that there is a little bit more work required there to understand how that will actually work and what will be done. So I would suggest that it would not be appropriate to accept that one until we provide advice on how best to manage that, in light of the fact that you would potentially be seen to be delegating authority to a board that doesn't exist as yet and may actually usurp the role of scrutiny and or executive. So I think we just need a little bit of a nuancing of what that actually would mean. And then the final point in relation to 5, forgive me for being a pedant, but in relation to the role of scrutiny, scrutiny can't provide that additional resource. So again, I think it's just about understanding that it suggests that additional resources are provided, but again, scrutiny are not in the room. So you can't amend that recommendation. So I would accept that's not accepted because it's not accurate. And then we will go back as officers and confirm an appropriate set of words with the scrutiny chair and make sure that's incorporated. So that would be the process that I would suggest for those 2 bits of advice. Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether Duncan wants to come in on that.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think just following on from the monitoring officer's advice, which I agree with, I'm just wondering if actually a sensible thing to do today would be for executive say that you're in favour of the spirit or thrust of the scrutiny recommendations. You're minded to accept them, but you recognise they just need a bit more work, and actually delegate it to monitoring officer in consultation with the chair of scrutiny and yourself or another member to actually just bring them into effect. It's just, there's just some wording issues if you adopt them. For example, number 4 says provide assurance. Well, if you adopt that, that would be executive providing assurance that data sharing from the transformation system between partners to deliver service and support is robust and resilient. Well, you as a group of the executive members can't do that. So I take the spirit entirely, what's intended. I understand why scrutiny said it, but I just think if you give light to the fact you're in favour of them in general and delegate to the monitoring officer and a number of members to actually just bring them to life, I think that's probably the easiest way of taking it forward. Obviously, you cannot delegate and it will need to come back to a further executive meeting in its own right after that point then.
Okay, so I've drafted, agree to the recommendations from scrutiny in principle and delegate to the monitoring officer and chair of the Children's and Family Scrutiny to agree the final wording. Heather?
Thank you. I think that's a really good way forward. I just want to make absolutely sure and very explicit that that the bit about taking this, understanding the spirit, I think is really important, that we're not trying to obfuscate or delay or anything. And I think it is because if we can help to work out the clearest set of wordings for the recommendations, we'll get the best outcome. And I think that's exactly what they had in mind. So I just want to say, yes, let's do that, because I'd rather do that than rush something through with the intention of supporting scrutiny's suggestions. I'd be happy to either propose or second that if that was what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I suggest that we also add in, as well as delegate to the monitoring officer and chair of scrutiny and to the lead member as well. I think that needs to be a triumvirate of that need to agree on those recommendations, because I think it needs to be from the service area, the monitoring officer and the chair of scrutiny. Is that acceptable to everyone? I'm happy to propose that from the chair, seconded by Councillor Shearer, and then we've dealt with item 8A and we return to the substantive item 8. All those in favour of that response to scrutiny? All those against? That's clearly carried. Okay, are we happy? Excellent. We love a happy triumvirate. So if we go back to the substantive item of item 8, we've had Mike, Liz and Sarah. Are there any other executive members that wish to speak on this item? I've got Councillor Wilkins. By a short head you got in there before I went to Councillor Woodman.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the lobbying side of things that Mike raised, I think that we all do this from a lobbying point of view, and I know Bill is very successful in this, but just banging home to the current government about the rurality of Somerset and the particular difficulties that it always seems to bring up. So I'm just going to re-mention that so that everybody knows.
Yeah, what I liked in the wording of scrutiny, they did get this one right, is the collective lobbying, because it is with organisations like CCN as well that we can get some of those points about rurality. We're with the initial proposals on fairer funding. rurality does seem to have been taken into account, but I know we're still crunching numbers on that. So move on to other members, and Councillor Cook-Woodman was first off the mark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It was just about the confidence of these savings, particularly on the 26-27. It says put £1 in, get £5.60 back, which is great. I mean, I've been offered the sort of investment myself in the past, but my question is really what's our level of confidence to be able to deliver that, because it's a great big jump from 1.9 to 5.6.
Depends if you're going to hold me to account. So yeah. Yeah, so I think what I would say before Amelia comes in is that extensive work has been done on this in terms of the people to work that have been done. Also, alongside that, we've had a specific accountant here who's got experience of working in other local authorities who have implemented such recommendations, and so he's brought with him that challenge around kind of, is it achievable? What have other councils managed to achieve? And although we know there is an element of risk in the plan, I think from the numbers that we've crunched, that's our best conclusion of those recommendations at this present time. But as we have said, there are a number of factors that could change that, and that's what we need to continue to closely monitor.
And Amelia?
I would say our confidence is increasing all the time, but it is increasing from where it began, which was a low base. So a lot of the work that's going on is around modelling, it's around understanding our financial information, it's understanding individual children and their needs so that we have a level of granularity to be able to make very confident forecasts and to have good assumptions. But this is a movable feast. There is new information that arises. There are factors outside our control in every direction. What I would say is that what I'm observing is the partnership that we have with finance. Our confidence is growing almost daily, but there is more to be done. And I absolutely wouldn't want anyone to think that there wouldn't be unknowns that may come up through the coming months. But I would also expect that our confidence would improve through the delivery of this plan.
Thank you, Nicola and Amelia. And moving on to Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick shout out to scrutiny. I did attend that committee as sub to someone. I just thought it was really great the way it was conducted. So that was brilliant. A couple of things from me. So People 2 were commissioned in December 2024. I can't see in the paper at what cost. I just wondered if that's publicly available. It's my first one. Following up from Councillor Cook-Woodman's comments, we've got in there, we're told £9.40 for every pound invested by 2930. And by 2930, if the plan itself is successful, then the cumulative deficit will be 190 million less than it would be if we did nothing, which is a hell of a big saving, and that's great. I do hope it's achievable, but with those sorts of big savings, you end up asking yourself, is it realistic as well? I think that's natural to think that. And Amelia did say earlier that it is a high risk plan. And if we don't deliver, then there's that risk of bankruptcy. So I think we do need to see, and I know it's been mentioned, but perhaps at pace, those detailed plans and property scrutiny of the individual savings lines and the work stream, so that we as councillors can have confidence or more confidence in delivering the plan. And one of the recommendations, and it's just worth noting that People 2 made these recommendations about 4 months ago, says in order to provide the capacity to drive SEND transformation, they recommend recruiting to the head of SEND post as soon as possible. So bearing in mind that the successful delivery of this plan is reliant on having that additional capacity, could someone update us as to where we are with the recruitment of SEND, that SEND post, please?
I'll start if that's okay, and I'm guessing Amelia's going to jump in. So, yeah, the overall work, I think, has been quite difficult. So as Amelia and Nicola's just said, we do have confidence in the plan, but it is still a difficult plan to deliver. The very sad news is even if we deliver it in full, we could still go bankrupt because this doesn't delete the deficit, it just stabilises the position and starts to reduce it from what it would have been. So unfortunately, this isn't savings, this is cost avoided, but it's it's money we don't have that we'd have been spending on that deficit. So it's a really significant issue. I think we should recognise this is a huge piece of work. You know, the links to the SEND strategy, the links to the very difficult system that we got there and everything else that the DMP represents, it's a real step forward for the council having a comprehensive plan. It will be difficult to deliver. Specifically in terms of, I can't find the figure, I was just looking, but the figure for the contract is published in the council's open data, so we'll dig that out for you. But I don't know what the figure was top of my head, I'm afraid. And in terms of the recruitment, Amelia and I were discussing just last week a potential where we got at least one CV. I think we might have a couple now of people we're talking to try and bring people in quickly who've got experience of doing this elsewhere, because that's the absolute critical thing. We don't have time to let people come in and find their feet for 6 months and then start to do something. It's much too urgent. But I don't know if Amelia can update if that's moved forward since last week.
Pass over to Amelia.
Yeah, so I think that you've articulated well where we are. So we're having those conversations around bringing capacity quickly, but some things will have to wait for full council. But there are things that we can do in advance of full council to make sure we can press the button as quickly as possible across all of that capacity. And all of those are moving ahead. Just on the point around the granularity of savings lines, some of those are more advanced than others. So certainly our ability to look at savings in relation to the capital programme is increasingly well advanced, and those have been factored in throughout. A further paper will be coming forward around that really quite significant capital investment going forward. Again, that our ability to target savings in that space is quite advanced. Some of the others are harder to predict. We need more information, but we are building that. But certainly the programme of bringing forward further executive papers is to enable this committee to really drill down in those individual areas. And some of them are very complex. I have to emphasise the complexity around demand is around need from individual children. And there is a growing demand that is not understood either nationally or internationally. And we are investigating all of the research evidence that exists, but this does remain slightly mysterious why this escalation of need has transpired. So we're doing the best that we can, but full information is not readily available.
Thank you. I think the point around this being both national and international as an issue is really well made. It is a complex problem that we are trying to understand as we are in flight. I have a feeling Nicola might have found the answer to the question.
So there is a decision report which states that the cost for this expenditure of this work was 85,000.
Thank you very much. That saves us an email later. Super. And next to Councillor Trimnell, Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. So first thing I want to say is that Councillor Power and I visited a school in Wincanton where I believe they are rolling out one of these SEND units. We were really impressed. We felt that actually the team that came out with us were really excited about the prospects. It's not always easy. I do think that there will be issues down the line relating to that. I think that you're going to have parents, once the sections are on site, I do worry about parents expecting their child to have a place in them, and I think that's something that we need to be aware of, that we're going to have to manage those expectations really carefully. I just wanted to ask, and Amelia's touched on it actually, that this sort of increased demand that has really sort of ramped up in the last few years. And we know that we've got a falling role going forward in schools, but I see that obviously the estimated amount that we'll be getting in every year still increases for the time being, and the estimated spend is even greater, and that's still coming in. And I wondered whether there was any chance that now we know that there was a big problem with COVID, but the children who will be coming into school in the next few years won't be that COVID generation. And do we expect that there might be a fall off of need going further forward as those children that are being born now transition into the school system?
Amelia, let's get your crystal ball out and tell us.
I think it would be wonderful if we were able to predict that kind of pattern. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Minall. We do have a falling birth rate, and actually this is one of those few instances where two problems are potentially giving us a solution, because we're able to use some of, as my colleague Phil Curd describes as latent capacity within the school system to provide something different at lower cost than using independent provision. It may well be that COVID lies behind this increase. However, if we look at the long trajectory, it predates COVID, and what's probably the case is that there is a long tail on this. This has been emerging over a long period of time, but COVID accelerated and exacerbated it. In which case, this is not something that will quickly go away, but that could be wrong. As we said, there is no national or international consensus on why we're seeing this growth in demand, and I think the critical thing that we have to do is to understand where we are in the now, to put in provisions that are serving children's needs now, and to do so quickly. And I'm really pleased that you were able to visit the unit planned in Wincanton, because actually, if we get this right, as Councillor has said, we can potentially be ahead of the curve, and that therein lies our greatest hope, in my view.
Thank you. And the falling roll is a mixed pattern. In areas we have got rising rolls as well, which is going to be an interesting challenge. I'm really pleased to see that we're working with the NHS, and we've got better data to be able to predict where that will come. But also we all know it's also around the challenge around our housing strategy as well. And as the local plan comes forward, all of these things will interlink. So it's exciting times, isn't it? Right, so we move on to our recommendations, which are that we agree the current SEND strategy and associated action plan are updated to reflect the proposed deficit management plan, and for the updated strategy to be scrutinised. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong recommendations. I'm on the scrutiny recommendations. Sorry, I was on the wrong page. There we go. We got there at last. My apologies. So our recommendations are to approve the proposed overall deficit management plan, incorporating a range of service improvement and projects as set out in Appendix 2, to note the updated DSG forecast deficit to 29/30 of £294.6 million, based upon current policy and practice and the risk that this presents to the Council's financial success sustainability. We note that the DMP includes work streams listed in 14.11 have been delivered or are in delivery in line with existing policy, and approved resources of proposed work streams listed in section 14.12 may be delivered within existing policy, but require additional investment to enable delivery in order to realise projected cost reduction as set out in this report. Work streams listed in section 14.13 will require a change in policy and may require additional resources above those included within this report to enable delivery, and these will be subject to further reports to the Executive in due course. 4, endorse and recommend to Council the approval of the incorporation of the PSG revised budget, including proposed investment and savings, the forecast deficit and the deficit management plan, into the MTFP for the period 25/26 to 29/30, as set out in Table 3 in Appendix 3. The additional general fund-based budget investment required from 26/27 to deliver the proposed DMP work streams set out in Appendix 4 up to 0.679 million as set out in Table 5, that the additional expenditure of 0.679 million at 4B is financed initially from the corporate contingency budget of 26/27, with funding over the MTFP period to be addressed as part of the balancing 26/27 budget in March 26. 5, subject to the approval of recommendation 4A to C by Council Executive to approve a virement of up to 0.455 million in the 25/26 from the corporate contingency budget to the education GF budget to fund the investment and resources required to deliver the DMP, subject to full business case approval by the Section 151 officer and Service Director of HR and OD, and note the quarterly progress on delivery and financial tracking of the DFG management plan will be presented to Executive as part of future corporate revenue and capital monitoring reports. That is proposed by Councillor Heather Shearer. It is seconded by
Could I just-
Oh, we've got an amendment.
The amendment from scrutiny, do we need to include that as a recommendation?
Yeah, we've always voted on that. Yes.
Agree that wording.
Yes, we agreed to, we agreed to accept it in principle and delegate to,
Just can't remember if you got.
we did.
Right, fine. So
Yes.
that's agreed. All right.
Okay, so we're okay.
Yeah.
You're okay.
So we're okay. It's seconded by Liz Lisham. I thought we were right. But thanks for double checking. And all those in favour, please. And all those against. Thank you very much. We've been sat here for 2 hours and 33 minutes. So I'm going to propose that we have a break until quarter to 1 in order to take sustenance. Okay, can I just thank Amelia for joining us from France and for not presenting in French. And thank you for getting through those small technical difficulties. And thank you to all in your team and the finance teams for this amazing piece of work that's come forward. I know it's been hugely difficult to get to this point, but so pleased that we have, because we know the importance of dealing with this issue. And I think the points that were raised about the lobbying that needs to lie behind that are incredibly important. We know that this is both a national and an international issue that we are picking up here. Okay, thank you. And we'll put us into adjournment until for the next 11 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody. And we move on to item 9, which is the General Fund Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, month 2, end of May 25. Councillor Liz Lisham to introduce.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm just going to do a very brief introduction because we will have quarter 1 at the September executive, where we will have more information, more appendices and greater insight into how things are going this year. So you'll see already that there are 2 areas of concern, and that leads me to say once again that we have no room for complacency whatsoever. And don't forget too that this budget includes £43 million worth of capitalisation direction. I also just point out that the way the contingency, so the corporate contingency budget of 12 million and the 3 million of corporate risk budget, both currently uncommitted, as you see at recommendation B, but they're also shown displayed differently in table 1. So if I may, I will hand over to Nicola Hicks, our Deputy 151, and I know that Clive Heafy, our Section 151 officer, is online too. So I'm not sure if Nicola wants to take it first or Clive. I'll leave it to them.
If I go first and then Clive can add anything I forget. So actually I don't have a comprehensive introduction to this report in front of yourselves today either. I think there's just a couple of things I wanted to point out. So at the moment, I think because this was a month 2 report, there's been quite a lot of focus on any forecast overspends at this point in time. We are still very early in the year to be doing that prediction for across all of the budgets for the whole of the financial year. So I think we did a particular focus on the large variances for this report, and you'll see those coming through in the quarter 1 report as well. But we are pushing for the mitigations. It's really important that we can't become complacent and we can't allow the forecast overspend to remain for this financial year, because that will put us in a worse position for 26-27 budget. So we are really working really closely with the services to try and identify those mitigations. You will see at the bottom of page 213 where it talks about the significant movements, the adults and services and housing one there of 1.2 million. That's a new kind of pressure for this year. That was one-off funded by the children's budget last year, but that's not there for that purpose this year. But that 1.2 million you will see in the children's figures is offsetting the overspend that they are forecasting for external placements. So in a roundabout way, the council still kind of has that money, and it's just going from one service to the other, and we still have the overspend as a collective there to cover. And I think that's where we're working with the children's team to identify of business cases that are going through, the ones where we are mitigating spend, but also we're identifying any savings that can be pulled out there. And that's particularly important as we're having this meetings with officers and with the services to look at pressures for setting next year's budget. We're looking at how some of those business cases are mitigating the pressures going forward that could be seen in next financial year. But I think, as I said, the Q1 report is a more comprehensive report with all of the appendices that will show the mitigations and will show some of the other data that we normally have in terms of debt collection and spend control. That's all I wanted to say, Willie Bill, unless there's any questions.
See, Mr. Clive Heafy has appeared before us. Clive, would you like to add?
Thank you, Bill. Yes, I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, and thank you, Nicola, for standing in for me. Just to reiterate those points, that as we go through the next 12 months, balancing this year's budget and coming in on target, balancing next year's budget, minimising any use of reserves or EFS, and managing a transformation programme are all critical parts of moving towards a financially sustainable position. And Nicola is absolutely correct that if we don't get on top of this year's budget, if we allow overspends to continue, they will just continue into next year and make next year's budget more difficult to manage. So we will be working very, very closely with the services. It's a team effort together with the services, finance, lead members, executive, all working together to try and make sure we come in on balance. And that'll be part of my focus and the finance team's focus over the next few months. So as Nicola said, there'll be a more comprehensive report next month, which will take you through all of the mitigating actions and give you assurance that mitigations are taking place. But that's all I wanted to add just this morning.
Thank you, Clive. And just looking at the table 1 there, I'm just wondering whether we could just have a little bit of more commentary on the reds there. So I'll go to Heather first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, of course, I'm more than happy to talk about that. Just want to say the month 2 numbers, I think what we've really concentrated on, because as I say, in Q1, at the end of month 3, there'll be much more detail about this. So when you look at, say, in Appendix B, where we've got the one red there around the children's placements, obviously, and as Nicola said, offset by this allocation of funding thing where we've offset it with the 1.2. I just want to say all of those other greens are green because we haven't really looked at the detail of them. Some of those will be underspends, some may be overspends, but we're just, in a sense, we're focusing on those big ticket items on this particular appendix. The thing to say about the children's the placements, the external placements, is we have again seen the number of children coming into our care increasing, and because of our, we have a certain number of foster carers. Not all the children are right for foster care anyway, but we certainly don't have the opportunity very often. We will put them in wherever we have a gap, but sometimes we have to have children go into residential, and that's just not what we want. One of the things that we are also doing, you just heard a lot of discussion about the deficit management plan on the kind of education, inclusion and SEND side of the business. But there is also, it's part of that wider transformational work we're trying to do with the business cases we put in around improving our reunification, I hate the phrase, but our reunification team, where we work to get children back into their family or an extended family member's home. At the moment, that needs boosting from this, and the business case has gone in. I think it's been approved, and that should have an impact on how we get children out of placements. We also have, of course, the work we're doing with 3 business cases around fostering. So the idea is to get these things through and approved so we can start to make a change to improve the number of our foster carers. There is an unfortunate thing because of the pressure that we have in our system generally about the lack, let's say, or sometimes the choosiness of the external providers that we have. We are finding now that whereas children went into unregulated placements just for a matter of days or at worst weeks, and we never want any child in unregulated because that is by its nature is an illegal placement. We want them into a more secure and a more quality assured placement, let's say. They are staying longer in unregulated now than they used to. It might be up to say months until we can find places for them. Now, some of that again is also going to be mitigated by Homes and Horizons, where at the moment I think the report says we had 7 open at the end of June. Our 8th one will be opening, and we've just got the match funding on capital from the government for to enable us to bring 9, 10, and 11 on stream. But that's not a quick process. But we now have 7 places, 7 homes open, and 3 pods or annexes in place. It's another 3 beds, which are now all in place but not filled. So our focus is always going to be around ensuring that we can match the right children into Homes and Horizons. We have it's about 78% occupancy rate now, which is quite high, but we need to get it closer to 100. And we've got those 3 extra beds, keep the pressure on to get the right places for those children in Homes and Horizons. But I think also the reunification work and one of the business cases on fostering is not just to get foster carers in, but that we should actually have more social care resources to actually wrap around. So we use that phrase all the time, and I'm sorry for the jargon, but that we can actually wrap care around a new placement so we don't have placement breakdowns. So all of those things will hopefully eat away at that 3.7 or 4.9, whichever one you want to look at it. That overspend on that placement, we have got plans in place where we're trying to bring it down, but it won't be like tomorrow. It may look different, and also improvement in modelling as well all the time gets more accurate. So I just wanted to say that's our mitigation really for that one particular line, which of course is an important one.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the adults numbers. I see we've got a red on housing. I'm just slightly confused by the commissioning thing, so I just want to pull.
I think
Is there a typo there?
I think there's a typo.
No, that's okay.
It should be on budget, not
sorry, I've only just spotted. Normally, I spot these things on first read. But that should.
Apologies.
That should be an underspend. Is that correct?
On budget.
On budget. On budget. Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Just to make it clear that the 1.2 million has come out of children's and come into adults, because the Thrive 16 plus housing matters should be within adults and housing now. So it's in the wrong place. So that's a correction. It's an overspend that we hadn't anticipated because we didn't have it in our budget, so we haven't provided for it. So that's one of those things that we're going to have to hope to make savings elsewhere, or maybe get a government handout, because they do give us money for things, not always when we expect it or as much as we want. But that's to explain it. That's why it's there. It's come out of children's and into ours, and we hadn't anticipated that at the time when the budget was set. But it doesn't mean we can't try and offset it.
Very much, Sarah. And just looking at the regulatory and operations line, who would like to take that? Richard.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that that will include the unrealised MTFP saving on waste. So some considerable work is done to reduce that right down, but I'll pass over to Chris to put more meat on the bone there.
Yeah, thank you. So there's 2 items within community place and economy, one of which is the waste overspend of 322,000. And as Richard describes, Councillor Wilkins describes, that accommodates the nearly £1 million worth of MTFP savings that were approved but are as yet undelivered. So that made up 2 items. One was the closure of a number of HWRC, so household waste recycling centres, and then the implementation of a permitting scheme at the remaining HWRC. So both of those are currently on hold, and we are pending negotiations with the contractor. So whilst it's a 322,000 over, that's actually masking £1 million of MTFP. So the service have done very well. It just doesn't show that in the storytelling. So I would want to make that point. The other one is around income for land charges. So land charges is a demand-led service. We saw a pressure last year of around £150,000. We made a conscious decision at that point not to put in a budget pressure, and we hope that the transactions will increase over time, and we are doing our best to mitigate those. Hopefully we will be able to do so within the wider service area. It is unlikely, unless the demand increases for land charge services, we won't be able to mitigate that within land charges itself, because there are no other areas to make reductions other than staffing. So we will be looking to the wider community, place and economy to help mitigate that as we go through the year.
Thank you. Any other comments, anything else that people have noticed in this? I want to think of a question for Councillor Rigby because he's just put something in his mouth. Yeah, sorry, Sarah.
So Chris, you're saying that not enough properties being bought and sold, aren't you really? So it's a fall off in the property sales because that's when you use the land charges service. So we can't control that, but that's what's happened, yeah?
Yes, so it's demand led. We're completely dependent on property transactions.
Thank you. Nothing else from members, so go to the room. We've got Councillor Denton. Hi, Dawn.
Hello, thank you. I know since we've had our emergency planning meeting and we've gone into the 12 weeks of emergency planning measures, the residents are really, we're all receiving emails about planning, but also some of our more in tune residents have asked about the finance of how this works. And it's just really a request for the Q1 report, if we could have some more detail on if this is a planning expense, if it's a procurement expense, if it's a key decision, and how the finance for this works. And if we're waiting for the Q1 report, I think it would be really useful if we could have that, a bit more detail about that and the funding of the Modrum contract in the next reporting. That would be great. Thank you.
Chris.
Yes, in terms of funding of the Mondrum contract, it's being picked up within service, and part of that was the last financial year. So it's £123,000 that we have commissioned over 2 financial years. So it's been funded within service. So there's no other immediate or identifiable financial impact of the prioritising decisions period. So there's nothing to report financially as yet.
Lucy Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got a couple of questions. The first one is about, it's around page 220. And it speaks about the reserves that are forecast to be below the risk assessed minimum level unless urgent management action is taken to develop further the transformation and savings plan. But on page 218, it states that covering the current forecast overspend with reserves would keep them within the risk-based assessment level, as in the forecast 5 million at the moment that we're forecast. If we were to take that out of reserves, we would still be within the limits. And so I wanted to know what's happening between now and a forecast next year, which just says that they are forecast to be below the risk assessed minimum. I just wondered what had happened to the reserves then. And I do have another question.
I think, thank you for your question. I think that you're comparing 2 slightly different things there, because when we talk about the reserve and the fact that we haven't got enough to cover, we're talking about if we were to cover the budget gap for next year from reserves, we don't have enough if we don't manage to reduce that gap down from the 101 million. Whereas we've got enough that if we had to, at a push, cover any in-year overspend from reserves if it remained at the 5 million. But what we're saying is we don't want to do that, because once those reserves have gone, they've gone. So we don't ever want to go into a situation where we are covering an overspend with reserves. What we need to do is work with the services to try and make savings and mitigate that, even if it's 1 year mitigation, while we look at a plan of how we permanently mitigate it. And that's what happened with children's last year. They were able to mitigate it in year, but then that saving remains there and that pressure remained there for them to look to mitigate it again this year or come up with a different way of mitigating it to reduce it. So that's where we said at the beginning, the real focus needs to be on getting rid of that overspend so we don't use the reserves, because once we start using reserves, you're quite right, they're not there and we're in dangerous territory.
I just think it was because it says they are, oh gosh, I can't find it and I want to see it. They are forecast, I can't even find it now on the page, but they are forecast to be below the risk-based assessment level during 26-27. So that's in paragraph 29. And I just couldn't figure out, is that use them this year to pay off this year?
No.
It just wasn't clear.
No.
Councillor Trimble, thank you. Duncan Sharkey to respond.
Yeah, I think the simple point, as Service Director said to start with, the £5 million is this year is a balanced budget, so we have the reserves in full. If we overspend by £5 million, the reserves can accommodate that £5 million impact. Next year, to balance the budget, we are still 101 million, sorry, 89 million of the latest forecast, where we don't have all those savings delivered. If we didn't do anything else this year to mitigate that position before we set the budget for next year, the reserves couldn't cover that £89 million deficit. That's all we're saying. So as we said, you're comparing two things. There's the in-year impact of a potential overspend, which we will obviously try and make sure doesn't happen if we can. The reserves could cover that. If we do nothing else this year in balancing next year's budget, the reserves can't cover that gap. That's what it says in paragraph 29.
Okay, I just read it as we've already forecast that to happen, so that's good. And then also on page,
I just want to come in to talk about the budget gap a little, because we're not yet looking at a revised figure in a public meeting, but we have had government talking about future and things like adult social care precept into the future. So we are already working with our new 151 and our now deputy 151 on revising the kind of what you might call the starting figure for 26-27, but we have got a lot more work to do there, and I'm hoping that I'm saying the right thing, looking at Clive and Nicola, that when we come to September executive, we will be able to update there on that kind of starting figure. And I think all members need some reassurance about how we are working on that very large budget gap figure, because we've got the dedicated schools grant deficit with the statutory override, we've got the budget gap figure, and we've got this figure from month 2. So we'll update the month 2 to month 3. We know the dedicated schools grant deficit forecast for this year, but that will be updated quarterly with a forecast as the work continues, and we will then be able to come to all members with a revision of where we're starting from for 26-27, because make no mistake, we've got no time to spare on that, absolutely none. It is really critical work that will continue. I know Clive has started that work, and he will be working with service directors throughout August on their savings. So we've got some growth figures. We don't yet have the savings figures to put alongside them. And I think that's actually the table that is most revealing when we start looking at a year ahead, is to look at the line that is growth and the line that is savings, and how those work together and the mitigations so that we can cope with the growth. Because Clive has put it in the simplest and the best way I've heard it, that we need our expenditure to come down to the same line as our income. And if we can't, we cannot create a sustainable council. So that is our aim. And we do appreciate that it's really difficult work, and that there is a lot of work going on before those figures are updated in public meetings.
Thank you, Liz. And Thea.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to read the sentence that has been referenced, just so that we're all clear what it actually says. The reserves are forecast to be below the risk-based assessed minimum level during 2026-27, unless urgent management action is taken to develop further transformation savings plans at pace during 25-26 for member approval and implementation in the 26-27. Now, I think we do a disservice to the people who wrote this report and the public understanding of what it says by cutting off half of the sentence to misrepresent what it says. What it says is, essentially, if we do nothing, there'll be a problem next year. No one's suggesting that, and to suggest that that's what it actually says is there's going to be a problem next year, full stop, is, as I say, it does a disservice to the people who wrote the report, and it does a disservice to the people who are watching this meeting, because it doesn't say that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trimnell, you said you had another question.
No, I'm very sorry, Councillor Buck Phillips, that you feel that I misrepresented it. I was just trying to be brief with it. I wasn't trying to, it wasn't a catch out. In fact, I've made myself look more stupid than anything else.
going to have a ding dong here.
That's fine.
Can we
I
move on
won't-
to the
no,
next question
It's
now,
fine,
please?
thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman, Leader. I've got 3 questions. My first one is just one which I'm sure will be easily given clarity. Huge fan of the Chief Executive. I haven't got an issue, but just a question on Appendix G. I'm just wondering what that Chief Executive budget is actually for. I didn't realise we even had one, so just some clarity on that. Spend it as you will, but just some clarity. The 2 other questions I have is around the forecast, where you're forecasting the overspend of 5.456 million, which I think, and this is obviously month 2. So I think this is probably seeing that as more reason for us to have this report provided to us monthly rather than quarterly, which I think is what's being proposed instead. But my question really is around the corporate contingency and corporate risk, those 2 things, which we're transferring into or proposed to transfer to earmarked reserves. I'm only wondering, because I'm just confused really. I suppose those 2 risks, those 2 lines mean 2 different things and are for 2 different things. And I'm just wondering how, if you're suggesting there'll be a £5 million overspend and you're drawing down on those 2 lines, how that fits into that, or is it just there's that pot of money there, it can be used for anything, corporate contingency and corporate risk doesn't really mean anything at all. And I don't know, just some clarity on that one. And the second one is at budget setting, all directors are made to sign that budget assurance statement for their directorates. And just quickly Googling it, I think it said about devising and maintaining that demand management strategy for services within their remit and taking best endeavours to mitigate any emerging forecast overspends. And just considering that we do have this overspend, I'm only wondering how is that overseen? What was signed and the actions they said they would take? How is that overseen? Are we holding directors to account? I'm sure we are, but I just don't see anything that I know that's transparent for me to be able to say, oh yes, the directorate is doing X, Y, Z based on what they signed on. Does that make sense? I'm just a bit unclear.
Yeah, thank you, Diogo. First of all, Duncan, how are you spending 1.998 million?
I think it says very clearly in Appendix G, if you look at the table, very small chief executive's office, that's salary costs, electoral services, that's the net cost of running all the elections, local boundary reviews, community governance reviews, etc. It's not the full cost, because obviously a number of colleagues will work on these things from across different parts of the council, but it's the electoral service cost and the salaries for the executive directors. Again, for slightly annoying purposes, some of the executive directors are actually costed in their service to keep the returns nationally straight to all the councils, rather than that being every executive director. But those are what those costs are.
Okay. Sorry, and then we've got the question on the risk. Are you going to pick that up, Liz? Or do you want to, Duncan?
I think if Councillor Rodriguez corrects me if I'm wrong, the question was around the transfer of the corporate contingency and the risk-based budgets into earmarked reserve. The point I think we're trying to get across in the report, and correct me if I'm answering the wrong question, or correct me, Clive, if I get it wrong, but what we're actually saying here is we don't want to apply those contingencies to the overspend now, because that takes the pressure off the organisation, the management, to actually reduce the overspends down. So we could have presented this report and said it was good news, we've got £50 million between those 2 in contingency. Actually net with £10 million underspend, but that wouldn't be true, because those contingencies ideally we want to feed back into reserves at the end of the year unspent, and therefore what we're saying now is we don't release them into these forecasts. You get to see the actual position, not the position masked by those figures, and that's what that line means when it says it puts them into earmarked reserves. So they will only be released into the forecast when we actually agree formally that we're taking money out of that reserve and putting it in to cover a cost that's happened. So there will be a cost against the earmarked reserve, for example. The risk reserve was specifically put in because we know when we did the restructuring, we will get some things wrong. So we already have, post when the budget was set, effectively when the cut was taken, and I think it was December or January, we know we've already put some additional posts back in because, for example, in customer services, we had a 3-year savings programme. We misunderstood that. We put all the saving in for year 1. So we've had to put that right and put it back to 3 years. That is exactly what that risk budget covers. So we know we'll be spending some of that before the end of the year. But if we start to release that into the figures now, it masks the overspends that happen in the rest of the council, and therefore you can't see what's going on, and it takes the pressure off us to fix that problem.
Thank you. I see we have Clive's hand up. Clive.
And thank you, Bill, as well. Just to confirm that this also adds to transparency for members as well. By putting it into reserves, we're not keeping it in lots of little jam jars and spending that in a place where you can't see them. It's all in one place where you can see it, and we'll be very transparent about any movements to reserves or any movements from reserves to support the budget as we go through the year. So it adds to that transparency and visibility for you.
Thank you. Who'd like to pick up the accountability question?
I'm happy to pick that up.
Do you want to do that, Clive?
Yeah,
sorry, it's one of those. It's difficult to make eye contact with you because you're on a big screen. I'm trying to catch your eye, and then I realise I can't.
And I do apologise. Yeah, so accountability. The purpose of accountability letters is to recognise that we all have a responsibility for good financial management, and for executive directors, for heads of service, they commit to managing within their budget. So when we look as we go through the year, the first call will be to ask what those heads of service and executive directors are doing to stay within their approved budget and deliver the services committed. If there's a good reason why that can't happen, and there would have to be a good reason, we would then look to how we manage that on a corporate basis. But yes, we will be putting quite a robust framework around holding directors, including myself as a director as well, that holds a budget, accountable for delivering services within that agreed budget envelope.
And in turn, league members also hold exec directors to account, as does the chief executive, and I hold the chief executive to account. Oh, yeah, who holds me to account? Oh, that's indeed. Indeed. Such is the joy of this role. Right. Oh, sorry, Gwyl. I've just noticed your hand. Good morning, Gwyl. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. Just a brief one. I noticed in the Climate and Place Communities appendix that parking has raised concerns regarding resource capacity, which is going to impact the processing of penalty charges and the implementing of the new parking proposals, which were agreed by the executive in March. And I've seen today in the West Somerset Free Press a report that says that Sunday car parking charges come into place in the autumn after Somerset Council scrapped a promised public consultation. As you know, car parking is a significant concern in both Wiveliscombe and Milverton, and we were promised a consultation before any changes were made. So I'm therefore seeking confirmation as to whether the consultation is still going to take place and to what extent these resource problems that parking has may impact on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwyl. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln who once said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
Well, this is the West Somerset Free Press.
Whom I think there was a race to put their hand up onto my right here. I'll take Councillor Richard Wilkins.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we're taking up the matter of the inaccurate report with the editor directly, and there will be consultation on anything going forward. I can guarantee that. We don't do things without consultation. So I'd like to put that there. On the more, what's the other question? The resourcing, I'll hand over to Chris on that, so you can some more.
Yeah, thank you. So just so we're absolutely clear, for the avoidance of any possible doubts, the consultation will go ahead as planned and no changes will be implemented outside of that consultation process. In terms of the resourcing, we are struggling in terms of getting to recruitment and filling those vacancies that were approved by full council as part of the parking policy work. We are going to be providing some updates shortly in terms of where we are with that process, and we are phasing the implementation, which includes that consultation phase. So yeah, there are some delays there, which is unfortunate in regards to recruitment of the staff resource necessary, but we have that available within the budget. It's just the process to actually be able to bring people into the council in a swift manner. So we're working on that with the team and of course with HR to support us, and we'll have some updates shortly.
Thank you for the confirmation and clarification. I'm most grateful.
Okay, thank you very much for raising that, Will. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other members wishing to speak, so we move to our recommendations, which is to note the forecast overspend revenue position of 5.456 million for 25-26. Note the 12 million corporate contingency budget and the 3 million corporate risk budget currently uncommitted. Approve the 12 million corporate contingency and 3 million corporate risk budget are transferred to earmarked reserves to be drawn as required through the year. Agree the mitigating actions are to be identified and implemented by the relevant executive and service director in order to reduce any overspends, to take actions and to contribute to the long-term financial sustainability of the authority. Agree that the council reaffirms its commitment to avoid a section 114 notice in 25-26 by continuing and strengthening its financial management actions and regular monitoring and reporting to ensure accountability. Note the in-year forecast overspend on the DSG of 34.804 million against the current budget for funding of 163.991. Note the total dedicated schools grant year-end deficit of 96.796 million are set out in Appendix C. Note the collection rates for council tax and business rates in paragraph 17 and 18. Proposer for that, Councillor Lyshon, seconded by Councillor Shearer. May I see those hands in favour? Those against? Thank you very much. Can I just thank all executive directors and service directors, particularly in the finance team, for their contributions towards the budget monitoring report. I believe that's the final item on our agenda. So just as a last aside, I just want to thank Max Perry for all their contributions during their time with us. They're moving on to a role with Devon County Council. Enjoyed LGR so much that they want to go through the whole experience once again. We wish you luck, Max. Okay, thank you very much. That's meeting closed.